Good evening and welcome to the City of Carpinteria special City Council meeting for Tuesday, March 26, 2024. The subject of tonight's meeting is consideration of appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to approve a mixed-use project at 4745 Carpinteria Avenue. And may we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Solorzano?
Here.
Vice Mayor Alarcon?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Councilmember Nomura?
Here.
And Mayor Clark.
Here. Thank you very much. Will you all please join me in a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
I wanted to let you know that I will need to recuse myself from this meeting because I have a real property conflict of interest.
Okay. Well, we'll miss you, but thanks for saying that. All right. Shall we?
Thank you, Mayor and council members and interested members of the public. My name is Brian Banks. I'm the staff planner for the Clintner mixed-use project here for your consideration on appeal. As a reminder, your council will be reviewing this project de novo or from the beginning. And so with that being said, I thought I'd take you through the project from the beginning. So we'll start with an overview of the project. Your council did review an iteration of this project at a high level back in December of 2022. And I will take you through the project description and then the history of the project. Oh. The project, as you know, is located at the Suncoast Rental Yard at 4745 Carpinteria Avenue. The project would include the removal of all existing improvements that exist on the site today and result in the construction of a new 3-story mixed-use commercial and residential project. The commercial portions of the project total about 4,000 square feet, mixed between 2-story elements, and that would front on the Carpinteria Avenue side. The first floor comprised of about 1,300 square feet of a unit, and then the second floor comprised of, as currently conceived, carved up into a couple of different spaces, totaling approximately 2,700 square feet. And again, these components would be located along the Carpinteria Avenue frontage. The residential component consists of 24 apartment units, not condominiums in this case. Those are comprised of 3 one-bedroom flats, 16 two-bedroom flats, and then there are 5 what we're calling townhome units along 9th Street, and those are comprised of a one-bedroom unit and 4 two-bedroom units. The unit sizes range from just shy of 1,000 square feet to approximately 1,500 square feet in size. And importantly, this project is utilizing the provisions of state density bonus law, resulting in the allowance for increased density, reduced parking standards, and increase over the city's 30-foot maximum, and also for an allowance for an exceedance of a portion of the project's zoned area lot coverage. In terms of parking, the project provides, as proposed, provides 53 spaces that would be located in the ground floor, what we're terming kind of a podium. It's not really subterranean, but it's the ground floor of the project. And as proposed, 8 of those 53 spaces would be designated as compact spaces dimensionally. The parking area would be served by a primary driveway off Carpinteria Avenue and then a secondary driveway off 9th Street. And then as part of the project, the applicant's required to provide frontage improvements along the 9th Street side where there are no current curb, sidewalk, gutter, and drainage improvements, and those would be part of the project as well. In terms of the history of the project, as I said, your council will remember back in December of 2022, you saw an iteration of this project at a high level in your joint City Council, Planning Commission, and ARB meeting. Summary of those comments were that the site was appropriate for the proposed type of project, but there were concerns amongst the Council, Planning Commission, and ARB with the size of the project and parking, and there was an expressed desire for smaller one-bedroom units. Subsequent to that review, the applicant went back and studied the project further, incorporated those comments into their proposed revised design, and submitted to the ARB at a conceptual level in May of 2023. The comments resulting from that conceptual review at the ARB were summarized as that the project was heading in the right direction, but there needed to be further softening and animation to give it a more residential type feel. And importantly, to work with the 9th Street neighbors on concerns regarding the impact to those adjacent residences, most specifically the Arbor Trailer Park, which is directly south of the project site. Continued review at a preliminary level in August of 2023, the applicant returned to the ARB. The project at that point elicited a mixed reaction, and there was a split vote at the ARB 2-2, and rather than leave those important considerations of the ARB unresolved and move forward to the Planning Commission, since the ARB is an advisory body and not a decision-making body, the applicant chose to try to further refine the project and see if those comments could be addressed, and therefore returned in October of 2023 for a continued ARB meeting, preliminary review, ARB meeting. And at that point, the ARB generally supported support for the project revisions, but still had concerns about the overall size of the project and compatibility and parking. At that meeting on October 23rd, the ARB expressed preliminary approval with very specific comment for the Planning Commission to consider the size, bulk, and scale of this project and future projects that are that the ARB knew were in the pipeline and that would soon be in the pipeline. And so with that, the project went to the Planning Commission on February 5th and was approved by a vote of 4-0 with Commissioner Salant abstaining. The Planning Commission, after their consideration and deliberation, did request project revisions and condition the project with the following revisions: that the applicant set back the western edge of the third floor element of the project, and I'll take you through this in some slides, closer to the center by 3 feet, and to study revisions to reduce the overall height of the project and related privacy concerns for the units facing the interior courtyards. The Planning Commission requested, with the applicant's agreement, that instead of the 55-year provision, the minimum allowed by state law, that the applicant would designate the affordable components, those 3 units, to be affordable for a period of 99 years, rather than, again, the 55-year minimum. Conditioned revisions to the project that the applicant, the owner, shall not install any over-the-air devices such as satellite dishes or antennas on the building that would exceed the city's 30-foot height limit. That the owner provide high-speed internet, broadband service, Wi-Fi to all of the tenants in the building at no cost to the tenants. And that the owner shall designate at least one on-site manager for the development, consistent with state housing law. So again, just taking us back through the location and some of the specifics in terms of the proposed development. The Suncoast rental site here on Carpinteria Avenue, adjacent to Franklin Creek, is just shy of an acre in size at .07 of an acre, fronting on Carpinteria Avenue and 9th Street. Here's the Arbor Trailer Park here. As you know, currently occupied by Suncoast Rentals. The site has both split land use and zoning designations. So we have both a visitor-serving commercial component along the Carpinteria Avenue side, and then a general commercial component, land use component along the 9th Street side. And then we also have split zoning designations, with the majority of the property zoned CPD, commercial zoning, and then a rectangle here, interesting little sliver of the property here zoned PRD, so residential. In terms of zoning overlays, the property sits within the 100-year flood hazard overlay, has a visitor-serving commercial overlay, again, related to the Carpinteria Avenue commercial component there. And then, because of its adjacency to Franklin Creek, is also located within the Coastal Commission appeals jurisdiction. So taking you through the project site more specifically, the proposed project, the ground level would be comprised, so we've got Carpinteria Avenue here on the north portion, and 9th Street here, and then Franklin Creek Channel to the west. You'll see this is the ground floor component, essentially a podium over which the two floors of residential development sit, and portion of commercial. So the primary driveway entrance here, again, along Carpinteria Avenue. Secondary entrance here along 9th Street. Highlighted here in yellow is the ground floor of the commercial component, the roughly 4,000 square feet of commercial. This is approximately 1,300 square feet of that. I think there's no specific use called out or approved as part of the project, but it's currently conceived likely as like a cafe or a restaurant, which would meet the visitor-serving commercial requirements of the zoning code. Within the parking, I should also say here along the 9th Street side, these are those townhome units I touched on. So here in light blue, there are 5 total units. In light blue, these would be the 2-bedroom. These are 2-story units, 2-bedroom units. And this here in yellow is the ground floor of one of the 1-bedroom designated affordable units. You'll see here on the west-hand side, this is our Franklin Creek channel again, and a 50-foot buffer from said channel, which would also be inclusive of open space landscape, and this is where the applicant is designating their stormwater area, swales, detention areas, that component of the project. Fairly substantial stormwater project, given the mostly vacant nature of the site now compared to what it will become. So that area is kind of a twofold purpose, threefold: open space, stormwater treatment, and then this area will be restored with a riparian habitat as part of the project. And then along 9th Street here, the southern portion of the site, as I said, the applicant's required to do the required frontage improvements per the city standards. Those would include sidewalk, curb, gutter, paving, 9th Street, that portion of 9th Street. Also important, I think, to the project is there are 2 utility poles that sit roughly in this area and I think over here. Those would be removed, again, as part of the project, and those utilities placed underground. And then as part of those frontage improvements, there would be additional parking, public parking, that would make room for 6, perhaps as close as 7 parking spaces, depending on how comfortable you got parallel parking along that 9th Street frontage. Moving on to the second floor, so again, starting at Carpinteria Avenue, this is highlighted in this darker yellow. These would be the second floor of the commercial areas, comprising of about 2,700 square feet. Again, as conceived here, carved up into 4 different spaces, but that may change if the project's approved and tenants are secured. Those areas can move around. Again, on the second floor, 10 of the apartment units. And then you'll see here the second floor of the townhome units, and then this is that townhome affordable unit. This is the second floor of the one-bedroom townhome unit. Difference in color here is we have blue showing the two-bedroom unit, and this yellow color shows one-bedroom unit. There's also a green roof over a portion of the project here along Carpinteria Avenue. This is kind of the canopy for the commercial element, maybe future cafe or restaurant. And then finally, the third floor element will be comprised of 9 apartment units with interior courtyard areas, common area patios, and then you'll see here the different coloring. That's a one-bedroom unit. The rest are 2. This is the roof of the two-story townhome units along 9th Street. And then this is the garage entrance from 9th Street, and above a unit here there'll be a common area, patio area. In terms of the views of the elevations, on top here you'll see the view from Carpinteria Avenue. It was kind of hard to read here, so we added in some more legible height calculations. So as part of the project's evolution from when your council first saw the project, and as it went through its ARB reviews and finally Planning Commission, the main evolution of the project was from its rather stark and bulky initial concept to the final concept here was for the direction to the applicant was to look at ways to break up the massing of the project, especially on the 2 frontages along Carpinteria Avenue and 9th Street, with an effort to push the height that they are allowed through state density bonus to the central portions of the project. So the result here is, again, at the top, the Carpinteria Avenue side, you see the various heights here. The red dash line, which is not easy to read here, is the city's 30-foot height limit, and the difference here being the 5 feet 7 inches that the project exceeds it. So again, that effort there was to reduce the height and the massing along the primary frontages of Carpinteria Avenue and 9th Street, and push the massing of the third floor residential component towards the center of the site. So that's Carpinteria Avenue. The lower elevation shows 9th Street. So Franklin Creek would be over here to the west, and then the driveway entrance off of 9th Street, the secondary driveway entrance off of 9th Street here. These are those 5 townhome units here. There was quite a bit of discussion through the evolution of the project with the ARB along that 9th Street frontage because, importantly, it does back up to the residential neighborhood. So on the Carpinteria Avenue side, we do have residences, across the street, but Carpinteria Avenue is fairly wide there. So in terms of neighborhood compatibility, there was a lot of focus on this 9th Street side of the project and an effort of the ARB and through public comments of neighboring residents to try to, to really get those units down as low as possible. The result of that through the various ARB meetings and the evolution of the project were that those townhome units were brought down to 26 feet in height, so 4 feet lower than the city's 30-foot height standard for the townhome units. And then there's the element here with the unit above the secondary garage entrance that reaches approximately 27.5 feet in height. And again, the highest portions of the project, the third floor residential units at the center portion of the project reach essentially 35.5 feet. Moving on to the side elevations, so west and east. To orient us here, on the left-hand side, you'll see here, this is Carpinteria Avenue. So this is that commercial component. This is that awning with the, or kind of patio cover with the green roof component. On the other side is the 9th Street component of it. So this would be as if we were looking from the creek, looking back towards the project in a side view. So we see again the commercial elements reduced in height as they abut Carpinteria Avenue, the third floor elements of the apartment flats towards the middle of the project site, and then as we move down on the 9th Street side, the townhome units and those reduced elevations, reduced heights there. So flipping around the lower elevation here, so this would be viewed from the east, which is mostly hidden. Again, Carpinteria Avenue would be here to the right. This is part of that commercial element, the reduced height there. The main residential components in the interior at 35 feet 7 inches. And then you can see kind of here the porches of those townhomes along 9th Street and above the unit above the garage. Again, this would be that secondary garage accessing off of 9th Street. In terms of site improvement and the site itself, grading, drainage, and frontage improvements, it's a civil plan. It's not a lot of fun to view, but I'll take you through it real quick here. So again, the 9th Street improvements, including the sidewalk, curb, and gutter, the removal of the electrical pole or the utility poles and undergrounding of the utilities, and then paving 9th Street all along the project frontage there. As discussed previously, this project includes the drainage improvements and the bioswales and retention areas here along the western portion of the project, adjacent to the Franklin Creek channel, and within that 50-foot buffer setback area. As proposed, there would be a gravel walkway or decomposed granite, something of that nature, that would reach from Carpinteria Avenue to 9th Street. Also required as part of the project review, as it's reviewed by Water District, Sanitary District, Fire District, and Public Works staff. The Fire District required the installation of 2 new fire hydrants. So there's 1 new hydrant going in here up on Carpinteria Avenue and another hydrant here down on 9th Street. And then, of course, the associated water utility, sewer and utility improvements that would be required. Touch on real quick landscaping. Again, the most prominent feature, so kind of what we have here is, I didn't want to take up too many slides, ground floor, second floor, third floor. On the ground floor, the most prominent elements of the landscaping would be, of course, again, that Franklin Creek buffer, again, proposed as a restoration area with native riparian habitat and compatible plantings, the bioswale and pathway, as we just discussed. Other features here are on the second floor would be the interior courtyards between the units, actually on both floors, second and third floor. The green roof over the commercial space along Carpinteria Avenue, patio area here along that unit that sits above the secondary access off of 9th Street, and then various planters along the frontages that help them soften the project and kind of bring it into the street. So those were the less fun images, harder to read. These are perhaps more fun because they attempt to give the viewer a photorealistic expectation of, if the project was approved and built, what it may look like from various vantages. So this obviously is a view from Carpinteria Avenue. You'll see here on the left-hand side, this would be the primary entrance to the ground floor parking area, garage area, that large patio cover with the green roof component on top. So this would be your primary ground floor commercial space. Again, I think conceived likely as a restaurant space, and then the secondary commercial spaces up above with a wide center stairway. Quite a bit of work was done with the ARB on this frontage as well, as the project evolved, and resulting in, again, kind of a mix of animation, here with these elevation, the mix of colors to kind of, break it up. And then there was quite a bit of effort here with this central stairway corridor to kind of open up the project as well. And then, of course, you see back here the highest elements, the third floor elements of the residential component. A closer in perspective of that portion, of the commercial portion of the project with that stairway. And again, you're getting a peek here at what the highest portion here. So that, again, would be the 35 feet 7 inches at the top of this roof ridge here. This is a perspective looking kind of northwest from 9th Street, so you kind of just get a quick peek here at the secondary driveway entrance with a unit above in that patio area. These are the townhome units as we've described. Considerable amount of work responding to ARB's comments on these units as well as the project has evolved, again, in an effort to bring them down in scale, in height, to vary them so they can offset, have different colors, different decks and porch placements to kind of animate those, have them not all look lined up in a wall, and to bring them closer into the residential component. Again, primarily Arbor Trailer Park across the street, but this is a residential component of the project, or the residential area here along 9th Street, and so that was probably the most effort in the revisions to the project architecturally were on this 9th Street side to kind of work on the compatibility with the existing neighborhood for these components. Just another view, perspective view from 9th Street. So again, the creek would be here on the west. This would be one of the affordable units. And you can see here again an attempt, so rather than having everything lined up, all the decks and balconies and overhangs in the same orientation and the same plane, part of the effort, again, was to break these up, to have a little bit of movement in and out, allow for some landscape areas, and importantly, to break up some of the colors and materials so it just doesn't look like one structure, to give it more of a, an individual feel for each unit. I think this could be a helpful slide. So again, in an effort, as the application was weaving its way through the process and through the ARB review process, in an effort to work on reduction of the parent mass, but still allow the applicant to take advantage of state density bonus and the provisions of that law with the increased height limit, was to again try to move the highest portions of the project to the interior of the site. So again, Carpinteria Ave up at the top here, the highest elements, the first portion of the highest elements of the roof are approximately, or a little more than 50 feet to Carpinteria Avenue, and then on 9th Street side, approximately 65 feet. So it gives a little spatial kind of understanding of the distances involved here at the site, because it is, it's a through lot. It goes from it's essentially comprised of a block of land between two streets. And so I think this slide could be helpful to understand those offsets and how the design strategy was to locate the residential components in the center of the property. Again, just another view here. This slide you can also see, although you don't have anything to compare it to, this image is a result of the 3-foot cutback that the Planning Commission required as a condition of approval. And that third floor element here was brought back into the interior by 3 feet. So rather than have kind of lined up in one plane here, offset a bit. And this is actually a good view where you can see that buffer area, open space, restoration, and stormwater improvements. Another view, this would be the creek side. So looking at the project as a viewer would from that open space area. And this is a view from the east side, which would be mostly hidden by the existing development that abuts the property on the east side, but nonetheless, this is an image of that elevation. And again, a mix of balcony types and, colors to try to break up the massing and kind of animate that third floor. So moving on to the zoning analysis, the project in most respects conforms to city zoning in terms of the allowable uses, the mixed use type of development with the commercial components facing out into Carpinteria Avenue, visitor serving and so forth. However, while we're here, the point of the building height, so the proposed project as modified through the use of state density bonus would exceed the city's current zoning ordinance height limit of 30 feet. The PRD portion of the project, the residential portion of the project as proposed, exceeding the city's max 50% lot coverage and proposing 69%. We'll get into state density bonus in a moment. The minimum parking required as proposed, 53 parking spaces, zoning ordinance requirement of 68, that would be inclusive of the commercial and the residential components of the project. And then one additional minor deviation was the request for the compact, for those 8 of the 53 to be designated as compact spaces. So the last point here is why we're here. The density bonus provisions allow the use of concessions and waivers or reductions from city's development standards in exchange for the low income restriction of those units. State density bonus requires a minimum in order to take advantage of those allowances, requires a minimum income restriction period of 55 years. And as we discussed, the Planning Commission, with the applicant's agreement, conditioned the project to require a 99-year income restriction term. And with that, Mac, if you want me to take through the slide, or do you want to take over on the?
I'll let you run through this one.
Okay, I'll run through this one because this one's pretty nuts and bolts. So in terms of the density bonus provisions, the project as it stands now sets aside just over 16.5% of the base units, or for a total of 3 units for low-income households. So meaning between 50 and 80% of the median income, in exchange for a 29% density bonus, or in this case, 6 units. And so this zoning designation currently allows for a density of up to 20 units an acre. So if you calculate 20 units an acre, at just shy of an acre, at 0.07 of an acre, it would allow for 18 base units to meet current, the city's current requirements, both zoning and land use. Through the use of state density bonus provisions that allowed the applicant to propose 6 additional units for the 24 total units that you see on the plans and as approved by the Planning Commission. Density bonus requires that a qualifying project be granted the density bonus and a specified number of incentives or concessions or requested waivers. Again, in this case, the waiver or the incentive or concession to exceed the city's height limit by that 5.5 or 5 feet 7 inches, to the automatically granted parking provisions that allow for reduced parking, the exceedance of the density of the residentially zoned portion of the project as well. And I should have touched on this before I said it. State density bonus allows an automatic granting of a reduced parking standard, or a parking standard, of 1 space per 1 bedroom and 1.5 spaces per 2 bedroom. And so that is not a request that the applicant needs to request of the city. That is automatically granted for an affordable project. So again, density bonus incentives and concessions resulting in the maximum height increase that they've proposed, and then a waiver to allow for the 69% lot coverage in the residentially zoned portion of the project rather than the city's maximum of 50%. This is where I'll hand it over to Mac.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. I want to touch base and provide a brief overview of state density bonus law in this context. I would add that the city already has Chapter 14.77. It's a density bonus ordinance as part of its certified local coastal program. Under state law, courts have held that if a contradictory, or if the local ordinance contradicts state law, that the local agency should follow state law. Now, in review of this project, the city's ordinance and state density bonus law are mostly consistent. However, the city's ordinance was last updated in 2016, so there's a few differences. However, for the most part, the project is both consistent with the city's density bonus ordinance provisions, as well as state law in terms of the percentages, the calculations, the same approach for incentives or concessions. So I'll be referring to state law here, and we can talk through any distinguishing factors under the city's local ordinance. But density bonus law requires that the city grant the requested incentive or concession for height by the applicant unless the city council can make written findings supported by substantial evidence that the concession or incentive does not result in identifiable and actual cost reduction, has a specific adverse impact upon public health and safety, or a historical resource that cannot be feasibly mitigated, or is contrary to state or federal law. In addition, density bonus law bars the city from applying any development standard that would physically preclude the construction of the development. So in this case, the applicants requested a waiver for lot coverage, or the PRD lot coverage, from 69 to 50%. And the city should grant that exception unless they can make findings that the development standard would create a specific adverse impact on public health and safety, again, an adverse impact on real property, or is contrary to state or federal law. I want to add that density bonus law does not supersede the California Coastal Act. However, it has a clause that says any density bonus, incentive, concession, waiver, or reduction in development standards and parking ratio shall be permitted in a manner that's consistent with density bonus law and the Coastal Act. And so that's in part what we're here before your council to discuss is that consistency determination. I think we can go to the next slide. I also want to highlight the Housing Accountability Act. The Housing Accountability Act established limits on local agencies' ability to deny or condition at a lower density certain housing development projects to comply with applicable objective general plan zoning and subdivision standards, including design review standards. I want to highlight that reliance on density bonus law for incentives or concessions or waivers cannot create an inconsistency with an objective standard for the purposes of applying the Housing Accountability Act. And then under the Housing Accountability Act, the City Council has certain findings that they should make with respect to denying or lowering the density of the project. And those findings are that the housing development project would have a specific adverse impact on public health or safety unless disapproved or approved at a lower density, and there's no feasible method to mitigate that adverse impact other than the denial or reduction of the density effectively. Again, the Housing Accountability Act contains a similar Coastal Act savings clause and states nothing in this section shall be construed to relieve the local agency from complying with the California Coastal Act. And then again, there's some uncertainty here because the Coastal Act contains similar language about compliance with housing laws. So the state legislator, I think, has not put you all in an unenviable position of trying to reconcile and harmonize these statutory schemes when you're considering housing development projects. And I just wanted to, I guess, here are, for example, are a couple of the Coastal Act housing provisions primarily related to the provision of affordable housing. I won't read all of these in detail. I think the first one is helpful, though, that nothing in the Coastal Act shall exempt local governments from meeting the requirements of state and federal law with respect to providing low and moderate income housing. And then, or any other obligation related to housing imposed by existing law or law hereinafter enacted. So there is this tension between state housing law carving out certain exceptions for the Coastal Act and coastal resources, as well as Coastal Act carving out certain protections for housing law that we're here to reconcile tonight in part with respect to this project. So I'm sure we'll get into more details throughout the meeting, but I'll let Brian take it back over.
Thank you, Mac. And as part of that harmonization effort, look, it's not easy. So staff worked diligently with the applicant and with the city attorney's office to try to accomplish this harmonization, this balancing act. And I think when we looked at the project, we kind of took, the Coastal Act requirements, the city's general plan and local coastal plan requirements, and we looked at those and we thought about, their kind of priorities, their levels. And so we looked at the broader Coastal Act policies in concert with the city's general plan and emphasized those priority uses that the Coastal Act specify: visitor serving uses, protection of coastal resources, coastal access, and views. And so with that, looking at a project like this through that prism, we first wanted to make sure that we could conquer those high priority elements of the Coastal Act, primarily the resource protection, visitor serving, coastal access provisions, and see if we could marry those to the extent feasible with the city's general plan policies. And one of the things that resulted from that is we do have the downtown T and housing element policies that encourage kind of this type of project where we use infill development in the in the urban areas of the city, and we maximize those opportunities to build housing, and we try to preserve farther afield locations within the city that don't have those access to services, restaurants, groceries, shopping, those kind of things, limiting vehicle travel, and conforming to the housing or the city's kind of vision for the downtown T that was drafted admittedly 20 years ago, but still relevant today. So when we looked at that balancing act of, those primary coastal policies, resource protection, coastal access, visitor serving uses, and then we balanced that with a project where, it's essentially it's a residential area with a rental yard and a commercial component. This is a kind of project that kind of could marry those things to the extent that we could marry something on a site like this with split zoning and split land use designations and the provisions of state density bonus law. So that was just as a planner, that was kind of the thought process that went into this balancing act and this harmonization, just for a little context, because I know the strict reading of housing law is pretty dry and may not be relatable to people like me. I like the physical aspect of it and how a project like this could harmonize, and so that's just a little background. Another important consideration with this project, because it does include a residential component, is compliance with the city's housing element. I know we've talked a lot about that lately. This site was identified in the city's housing element as a candidate site 17, with identified for residential development up to a density of 20 units per acre. Of course, with the application of the density bonus provisions, as we just discussed, if we do the math on the full acre, the site would result in 28 units per acre, so we would exceed the minimum requirements of the housing element, what the state wants to see. We moved this project to the pending projects list when your council reviewed and readopted the housing element back in January. And as a result, we counted the 3 low-income units and the 25 above moderate units in our regional housing needs assessment obligation. You can see here on the second line. So here's our 3 affordables, and then the 21 would be fit in our above moderate table here. Not that this has any effect on your decision to proceed tonight just as a placeholder here. If the project was not approved, then we would still need to provide those units to meet our over 900 total in this cycle. Really quick, and I know your council has heard a lot about housing this last year, so I'll make it brief, but with the latest information on the income limits, what these affordable 3 units would mean is essentially approximately $2,070 a month for one person based on the median income table. It might not be affordable for some folks, but that's how the math works out. And so, again, these numbers are updated periodically and based on those regional income levels. And nearing our conclusion here, I promise. Again, as part of that balancing act, when we looked at the Coastal Act and state density bonus and other provisions of housing law, and we looked at the city's general plan and coastal plan, the project is an infill development, mixed-use development that would be consistent with the downtown core objective and policies. It includes visitor-serving commercial component with the appropriate mix of uses, especially along the Carpinteria Avenue side. The housing type's appropriate for the downtown area, again, seeking to have a workforce housing type of development, and on the smaller unit sizes. And again, it's not a for sale project. These are rental units, not condos. The integration, which is one of the goals in the general plans, the integration of Carpinteria Avenue with the downtown, so a part of the T. So rather than a high-speed, driving by area of town, we want to kind of bring it into Linden Avenue and make it part of Linden Avenue in the downtown core. And again, importantly, balancing the ability to provide some walkable housing, get people out of their cars, and allow them to seek the services that they need without having to get there in a vehicle. And then lastly, we've touched on the creek preservation and the restoration and buffer area. To bring up the specific points that were raised at the February, what was that, 12th City Council meeting with respect to mountain views. And so we did look at this in depth, and again, as part of that balancing act, where we took the priority coastal uses, and views are among them, and we balanced that with the requirements of state law. And what we found was, with the city's 30-foot height limit, essentially an applicant could come in with a project that would meet the city's 30-foot height and not through the use of state density bonus or any other kind of concession or incentive or waiver. And, it's going to be 30 feet. And the preservation of those views that are afforded to the public now would likely not change. So these were the story poles that were installed, what was that, August. And this is the 9th Street view. So what we see here, this is Megan here for human scale context. This is the existing hedge along the back of the Suncoast property. These are the story poles of the townhome units, and this is one of the poles that would be removed. And so, when we looked at the project and we think about public views, this is kind of the result of the project. And in the city's policies, you can see here, the design of the community should be consistent with the desire to protect views of the mountains and the sea. We acknowledge that. Preserve Carpinteria's visual resources, ditto. Preserve broad unobstructed views from the nearest public street to the ocean. We don't have to worry about that here. Avoiding view impacts. Again, when we talk about those priority land use issues that staff looked at in our balancing act, preserving those views up and down the coast, preserving the views from the bluffs, preserving the view up and down Linden from the mountain to the sea. Those are the priority coastal issues that we weighed and balanced. And then again, to preserve and strengthen the visual and physical connections between the downtown, beach mountains, and other neighborhoods. Another of the issues that were brought up at the February council meeting were issues of traffic safety. These were issues that were brought up at several of the ARB meetings and at the Planning Commission meeting as well. As written in the staff report for your consideration tonight, the project, as it was going through its review prior to the Planning Commission decision, the applicant was required to provide a traffic study, parking circulation study, that was reviewed by the city's contract traffic engineering consultant and determined to be adequate and accurate in terms of the city's standards of review for such projects. The specific, the issue of significant traffic is really more of a CEQA issue than it is any kind of discretion that we can use. The city uses models and environmental thresholds to determine what a significant impact is, and based on those thresholds and those models, this project didn't reach that level of significance. However, we heard the specific issue of safety, and that was one that we were also concerned about, and we specifically went back after the February council meeting where that comment came up again, and we worked with our public works staff to review the project again, even though they had reviewed it and confirmed that it met the engineering standard. We wanted to confirm that they still feel that the project is safe. And so from just an observation standpoint, existing now is a pretty large and wide hedge along Carpinteria Avenue that encroaches out into the sidewalk and does indeed impair visual sightline, especially viewing west towards the creek, Carpinteria Avenue, where cars admittedly can be coming in pretty hot, especially from that westbound direction and heading towards downtown. As a result of the project, that hedge is gone, so that view obstruction it would no longer be there, and the proposed elements of the project would be set back in a fashion that would open up that view corridor here for safety purposes. While this kind of review would normally happen upon issuance of or approval of the entitlement as the applicant moves towards building permits and road encroachment permits and those sort of things, where the fine details would be reviewed by public works staff, we asked them to take another look at this project in response to those concerns brought up at the February City Council meeting. And they, again, agreed that the project would not result in a safety impact, and they would condition the eventual build-out of the project to have a 6-foot red striped curb 6 feet on either side of the proposed new driveway. So you'll see those pretty much all around town, and that's a tool that public works staff uses to make sure that cars don't park so close to driveway, essentially exits, so that there's a visual safety line of sight there. Some red curbs will extend much further than others based on the specifics, if there's a curve, the width of the driveway and so forth. But in this case, our public works staff determined that a 6-foot red stripe on either side of the proposed driveway would be appropriate. And so again, just another visual here. I tried to do my best to approximate where the new driveway would be based on the existing conditions. So this would again be looking back towards the west, towards the creek, Lavender Court. Existing parking spot here that would obviously go away with the red and the new driveway and the red striping. And then you can see here, this is be looking back towards Linden, eastbound. Here's the adjacent neighbor's driveway, and you can see, there's a red curb there. I think it's probably 3 feet or so existing. So again, with the removal of that hedge, the sightline should actually improve from what it is now, and based on the fact that the driveway, the garage portion where you enter the garage is set back substantially further back from the street. We're getting close to the end here, thank you. In terms of our environmental review analysis, staff still feels comfortable that the CEQA exemption that the Planning Commission found would still apply to this project. It fits neatly within CEQA guidelines section 15332, which is reserved for such infill development projects. That exemption is allowed provided consistent with the city's general coastal plan and zoning code, again, as modified by the provisions of state housing law and harmonized. Located within the city limits on a project site of no more than 5 acres, substantially surrounded by urban uses, has no habitat value for endangered, rare, or threatened species. Approval of the project would not result in any significant effects related to traffic, noise, air quality, or water quality, and that it can adequately be served by all required utilities and public services. And with that, I'll conclude with your options today. That Mac, I see him sitting up in his chair. He might know I'm okay to go ahead and read those. So your decision today, whatever it may be, staff has 3 options for you. You can choose to make the required findings for approval of the project, thereby approving the project and accepting the categorical exemption that I just went through. Alternatively, you can deny the project, thereby reversing the Planning Commission's approval and direct staff to revise the findings and return at a future meeting, essentially, to prepare findings for denial. Or you can request that the applicant modify the project in some way that would allow you to approve the projects and subsequent conditions and still accept the CEQA exemption. And with that, I will end my presentation and be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Good job. Any questions of staff?
Quick question of staff. This has to do with the site plan, actually specific. It doesn't, on the plans that we received, they're too small, not detailed enough. My question is, how much elevation have you planned on that specific site? In other words, currently, the building sits lower than Carpinteria Avenue. It shows on the plans that it looks like it's been raised up, showing a slope going down towards 9th Street. So that's my question. How much fill, how much height, elevation?
Council Member Namiro, third mayor, thank you. Good observation. The site, approximately, there is some gradual slope to it. The site, given that it's within the flood hazard overlay, has a requirement to meet city's floodplain ordinance and FEMA regulations to be brought up where such that the finished floor is raised a minimum of 1 foot above that base flood elevation. So roughly it varies from, and the applicant can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm guessing anywhere from 12 to 18 inches higher than existing grade, the existing condition of the ground today.
Okay, sounds good. The reason I say that, it looked like on the cutaway site plan, it looked like it was about 2 or 3 feet, so I was curious about that.
Councilmember Namura, if I may, I can just kind of elaborate on that a little bit more as well. And the applicant may touch on this in their presentation, but my recollection, Brian, if we go back to site plan, there's in the upper right-hand corner, the project would essentially be at existing grade, and the property naturally falls away maybe about 2 feet vertically to the bottom left-hand corner, just given the topography, and they've tried to, kind of take advantage of that natural fall in terms of planning for their drainage and what have you, while still being able to meet the flood zone requirements that Brian was talking about, of leveling off habitable ground floor areas at that minimum 1 foot level above the flood zone level, flood zone height requirement.
Got it. So the banners that were put up, story poles, basically, those took into account the elevation change?
Councilmember Numero through the mayor, yes. So those had been installed and certified at the resulting ridge height. So we would measure what does that become at its maximum.
Okay, thank you. One other question has to do with the easement, the side where you have the Franklin Creek, showing some existing trees in that area along with an additional 50 feet setback. Is that correct? And are those trees going to be remaining, become part of the, I would say, improved landscape with the pathway, or how is that going to be addressed?
Council member, thank you, through the mayor. Indeed, so what we have here along the Franklin Creek Channel is a flood control easement. So the flood control actually controls, the flood control channel there. And then along within that easement, so there is some space that's within the flood control's easement between the actual channel, the concrete channel, and the subject property's western property line. So what you see there, council member, are some sycamore trees, as I remember. I think they were all sycamores. We did require an arborist report, even though those are off-site and within the county's property. We did require an arborist to review those trees and make sure that the necessary improvements, mostly related to the stormwater work that would have to happen, would preserve those trees, and then the compatible restoration plantings resulting when they're done with their grading and operation, drainage operations. That area would be restored.
Got it. And then I heard, I'm sorry, my last question. The 9th Street development or area, I understand there's going to be street improvements on that one. Would that include a turnaround at the end of 9th Street, since that is a dead end? Right now, it doesn't have one.
Councilmember Numero, through the mayor, yeah, indeed, we didn't have that so the fire department had worked with the applicant and had required what they call a hammerhead or a T. So as a result of the dead end of 9th Street here, because it runs into the channel, and hopefully soon you'll see the Franklin Creek Trail, which will be coming online or through the review process soon. There's no way to turn around, and they do require a way to turn their engines around. So as part of the project and some of the actual revisions to the project as it was working its way through the review process was to include that T or that hammerhead, and essentially the short leg of the T is here in the driveway before it gets to the gate, and then the long head of the T is out here on 9th Street. So indeed, the fire department gets their required hammerhead turnaround here as part of the 9th Street improvement.
So that would then fall on the property of this site.
Correct. Portion of the T would be on the private property, but the long portion of the T would be within the public right of way.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No? You mentioned that, this is hard because it's a whole new ballgame for us. But, you mentioned so many things so much control we don't have, but what do we have? What can we change with a project like this? What kinds of things could we change?
Mayor Mack was quick on his button there, so I'm going to let him take a stab. But I can just, from the planning perspective, what we can do is harmonize. And so the efforts that we're trying to do here is to harmonize so that we comply with both the city's requirements, general plan provision, the Coastal Act, and State Housing Act. So we can look at things that would better be able to harmonize those two things. There could be things that your council could consider with the applicant to try to improve the project in a way that may be acceptable to you that wouldn't violate those state housing provisions, and that's where I'll stop.
Mayor Clark, the recommendation would be, as kind of those slides outlined, for there's specific areas where state law puts forth very specific findings, right? So density bonus law, for example, lists certain types of findings to choose not to grant an incentive or concession, in this case for the height increase. So the recommendation would be to develop the record to make those findings if you want to condition the project, if your council wants to condition the project in that manner. So we can talk through, based on during your deliberations or at any time, what direction you want to go with certain potential changes to the project, what findings might be implicated under either density bonus law or the Housing Accountability Act. I would add that, in the areas, particularly, for example, under the Housing Accountability Act, if you're dealing with issues outside of that would not effectively deny the project or lower its density, then your council has discretion to impose conditions based on objective or subjective standards to try to harmonize. However, it's to try to give the fullest effect to both the Coastal Act and state housing laws. I think the reasonable approach would be to make the findings to the extent that you want to make certain findings related to the key issue areas. So refusal to grant the height incentive or concession, changes to the lot coverage. We could walk you through how to make those findings under state density bonus law. To the extent that you're looking at options that would lower the density, we would look to the Housing Accountability Act. And then to the extent that you're interested in imposing conditions on the project that are kind of unrelated to those issue areas, your council still has wide discretion to condition the project in certain ways. So I'm happy to try to answer those as we go, based on your interests.
Okay. I noticed in the municipal code under this section 1477, there's a section 040 that says, for purpose of calculating base density, any area of land on a given site in the coastal zone that is not potentially developable due to hazards or buffers shall not be considered potentially developable area, and the base density shall be determined based only on the potentially developable portion of a given site. Was that done here?
Through the mayor, I think Brian can supplement this answer, or to the mayor, Brian can supplement this answer, but we did look at these coastal, these environmental resource factors, including but not limited to sensitive habitat, steep slopes, public access ways, or geologic instability, and determined that those were not issues on this site. Now, it is within the creek's preservation program, and there's a setback, and the project accommodates that setback. This is one of those areas where there's tension between changes and amendments to state density bonus law that set their approach to calculate base density based on the maximum allowable base density, which in this case would be that 20 units per acre across the entirety of the site, and not based on this narrower potential definition that's in the older version, that's based on an older version of state density bonus law. So in the city's position has been that throughout this process has been to follow the most recent version of the state density bonus law with respect to this issue, given that there's no other impacts related to sensitive habitat, buffers, steep slopes, public access ways, or geologic instability for the site.
Well, it does say shall not be considered potentially developable. I mean, you can't develop on the creek buffer.
Right, and Mayor, I think we can add to that part of that. So if we take Mac's response and we looked at it vice versa, our current state density bonus section of our ordinance doesn't conform to the current provisions under state law, and we'll be coming back, our long-range team will be coming back with you soon with those updates. So what we did was we used the current language of state density bonus law, but then again, I don't want to use the word harmonize because I know it's something that people are getting tired of hearing about, but what we did, notwithstanding the fact that the language of the state density bonus law currently doesn't have that exact language that's in our ordinance currently from, I think that was 2016. What we did is we looked at the creek's preservation program. So while the Franklin Creek is not designated as environmentally sensitive habitat, or ESHA, it's not mapped, it still is within our creek's preservation program. So this is one of those balancing acts we did, and we can say, well, it's not mapped ESHA, and it doesn't contain, now it's a vacant lot, sensitive habitat, but by the application of the policies within our creek's preservation program, we were able to now condition the project to restore that 50-foot creek buffer, which is also going to be doubly used for their stormwater provisions for the project. So long-winded answer, but this was part of that balancing.
Can you bring up the artist rendering of the front of the project again? That one. So the dark area on the left behind the tree, is that residential that I'm looking at?
Mayor, that's part of the commercial, the upstairs, second floor commercial component, correct?
Okay, just, you know, I realize that this is the project we have, but I mean, just hypothetically, could a developer have come in and said, I want to do a zone change on the VC? And, you know, this is basically archaic zoning when there was only one road in and out of town. It's basically a vestigial remain. There's many ways now into Carpinteria, and we're having to rezone all kinds of areas. Why couldn't we rezone that front part to not be commercial and have it be all residential? And you know, I'm wondering, I mean, I don't really know, but I know we've done that on other projects like Lavender Court and the other one across the street from this one. But I don't think that there's, you know, they've got I think the vacancy rate's pretty high there. So I mean, could a developer do that kind of thing?
Mayor, this one falls.
Especially in light of the, you know, the new housing laws and rezone everything.
Mayor
I'm lucky today that I have the director to my left, so we're going to let him take that one.
Mayor Clark, I can help answer this one. So maybe just a couple clarifications to start things off. Neither Lavender Court nor Village Gardens, the project next door, received a rezone. Those are both zoned.
Oh, I know that, but I'm saying that they do have commercial space.
Correct. They are
But
both
I'm
considered mixed use.
They're considered mixed use, but I'm saying, how valuable is that?
Well, in this
How,
case,
you know,
so-
are those, is the occupancy the same rate as residential would be? In other words, if it was residential, it would be 100% occupied. What's the occupancy rate of the commercial in Lavender Court and the other project?
That I do not know, but I can speak to the fact that this site, being designated visitor serving commercial, that is a priority land use under the Coastal Commission, right? And so this is one of those types of land uses like agricultural zoning that the Coastal Commission affords, you know, an additional or higher level of protection to. And that's why we have this visitor serving overlay as well, and specific development standards for that overlay in our zoning code that say, hey, you can do a mixed use project here, you can incorporate residential, but it needs to be located on the upper floor. It needs to be set back off the primary street frontage. You have to preserve that, you know, kind of that street function of the project for visitor serving commercial uses to be consistent with that priority land use of the Coastal Commission. So, you know, in other words, an applicant could propose a rezone here, but it's not likely to be found consistent with our coastal land use plan or to ultimately be supported by the Coastal Commission.
Okay. So, in terms of, you know, if you wanted to have reduce the height, and we do have one objective standard in our code somewhere, and that's 30 feet in height. And I noticed some of the citations given in the staff report, Cal Renters and Bankers Hill, and neither of those really relied on an objective standard. Are we aware of any case law where the courts either ruled for or against an objective height limitation?
So, Mayor, I believe in both of those cases, or in many other density bonus cases, an applicant comes in and requests a specific incentive or concession to eliminate an objective standard to provide for allow for the additional density. So often, I think the most common ones are things like height or lot coverage requirements, setback requirements, in order to accommodate the additional density bonus in exchange for providing the deed restricted lower income units. So it's fairly common for a developer to ask for a specific incentive or apply for a waiver for a specific numeric standard in a local agency's code.
And so could you maintain the density of a project, but reduce the square footage by requiring the units to be smaller? Just in a general sense? Not necessarily this project, but in a general sense.
So
Is that something that can be done?
So Mayor Clark, that would then implicate the Housing Accountability Act. So if you're looking at things like reducing a density, or if you're,
No, not reducing the density, same number of units.
yeah, so. Overall size of the unit. So there may be some wiggle room in terms of square footage, but there is at least I guess, the definition of lower density means under the Housing Accountability Act, which I'll get the exact quote for you in a second, but it's effectively the residential capacity. So if you were going to reduce the square footage in a manner that eliminated bedrooms or made it infeasible for people to share a bedroom, perhaps, there's a chance that a court would find that that was an impermiss and failed to make the findings otherwise required by state density Housing Accountability Act. A court may find that that was an impermissible lowering of the density of a project. So for instance, if you were in a hypothetical project where it was all 2,000, or say 1,000 square foot, two-bedroom project with 2 units, and you said, I want one unit is 1,000 square feet, and I want the other unit as a one-bedroom, 500 square foot project. Based on the definition of lowering the density, it would likely be that you need to make the findings under the Housing Accountability Act.
So density is not just the number of units, it's the number of bedrooms? Is that right?
So let me read the language for you.
Yeah.
Lower density includes any conditions that have the same effect or impact on the ability of the project to provide housing. So, to the extent that a square,
So bodies.
so something to provide housing, right, for individuals.
Okay. And then if a project came in, I realize this is a unique site, but if a project came in for housing there, but they didn't use any other housing laws. They're just going to do a straightforward project, hypothetically. Wouldn't they also have the same creek buffer, the same visitor-serving commercial, and the same residential use of the rest of the property that we're using to harmonize?
Mayor, I think if I understand you correctly, so yes, our zoning designation, our land use designations, our creeks policies, they don't change.
So the harmonization hasn't gotten us anything, right?
The provision of the request in this case to exceed the height and to exceed the density is what's at issue here, to allow to provide the greater density. Without those allowances, an applicant couldn't get to the density that they're at with this project. So essentially, if a project met all of the city's requirements as written today without taking advantage of state density bonus, they wouldn't be able to get to the density, obviously, that this project requests. That's kind of the whole point.
And Mayor Clark, I would kind of flip your reasoning on its head and say, right, that the harmonization exercise here is preserving those elements of our local coastal program. It's providing that they still meet the 50-foot setback. It's providing that they still provide that visitor serving element while also accommodating the spirit of density.
So this project is creating those things. They weren't there already.
Currently, there's not a creek setback on this property, nor is there a visitor serving element to the property as it exists currently. I mean, I don't think too many visitors are renting equipment from there, but it's, and it's.
From the current use.
Yes, right, so this
not the-
project
not the-
is.
Not the zoning.
Is incorporating these elements into the site that aren't there currently.
Okay.
Mayor, just to dovetail on that answer, the city's, well, the legislator has enacted state density bonus law in order to encourage private development to voluntarily provide, or I guess, receive benefits in exchange for deed restricting lower income units. And so that's where you get the exchange. There's also this exchange process, right, where the state says if a private developer provides 3 lower income affordable units, in this project's case, then they get these certain benefits and protections under state law. In your hypothetical example where someone wasn't going to leverage any of those state housing laws, we would have to redo the analysis for a project that had maybe at a lower density, but all market rate units, no affordable units whatsoever. So that's part of the trade-off calculus here as well.
All right. Yeah, anything else? All right, so may the applicant give us a presentation?
Mayor, actually, before the applicant presentation, I just asked that the council provide ex parte disclosures.
Sure.
So any communications or information, if any, that you may have had outside of this meeting relating to this project.
We'll start with Roy.
I did. I exchanged email with the developer last week.
Okay, and I'll disclose, I met with the developer on the site, and he explained the project to me.
On January 26th, I did a tour of the city with the city manager, and we stopped by the property on the 9th Street perspective. That was it.
And for me, no contact, made that a point. We did share exchange through a TV reporter. I got some information, but that was only what everybody else, the public, heard. That was it for me. Wanted to keep it clean and simple.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. So, okay. Good evening.
Welcome.
Mr. Mayor and council members. I'd like to introduce my team. I'm Michael Stroh with DMHA Architecture, Justin Klintner, who is the developer and builder, and Wiley Uretz, who is our attorney. So we're here to discuss the appeal of the project at 4745 Carp Avenue. I feel for you guys, actually. You guys are being forced to do something and to deal with things that you're kind of hamstrung. As an architect, I can tell you that I'm actually being forced to do the exact same thing because I don't know what to tell my client in terms of what's allowed and also, what the process is. And so we believe that the process with respect to this project has worked. We've gone through and we've met with all of the departments and we have hammered down on our architecture and hammered down on our mass and bulk and scale and further just cut away and cut away and cut away. The first time you guys saw this, it was a big bulky stack of boxes because we brought that to you because we wanted to see, okay, what can we do? And we've cut it down since then. And so, we believe that through that process and through the approvals that we've gathered, that we have met with what the standards of the city are, with also being in compliance with what the state allows, without going too far. The state bonus density allows us to go a whole lot further, but we're not choosing to do that. Not just as architects, but as the developer as well. He's not choosing to do that. This is a relatively, from a state bonus density standpoint, this is a relatively small project. For Carpinteria, it's not, and we understand that. So we have, we've evolved our facade design. We have removed the third story from 9th from our original proposal. We've broken down our massing on both street elevations. We have developed our palette materials, beachiness, facade articulation, all working with ARB and planning extensively, as well as then the Planning Commission. And we've stepped back units and rotated sections of the building just to further just break this down and not have it just be a big bulky box. Because I'll be honest with you, we design a lot of these buildings in various jurisdictions, and the zoning result on these typical urban lots is a big box sitting on top of a parking garage. And, you just you get to carve away little niches. This, because of the site, because it's a trapezoidal site, it's a little wider, it's allowed us a little bit more latitude in terms of what we have put together. And so, let's see, Brian, how do I move sheets? Oh, all right. So, I want to start actually, Councilman Nomura, with respect to flood. So we met with flood. The flood height is 16.2. Directly behind the sidewalk at Carp Avenue on that northeast corner is it's just over 17 feet. And that actually happens to be our design flood elevation. So everything goes from there. Yes, it does flow towards the southwest, and there is a pitch. So by the time you get to the sidewalk on 9th towards the end unit, sure, it's up about 30 inches off of the ground. But that's natural grade. We're respecting that. And so, we're not building up the site. We're not, other than what we have to. We can't lower that any. Because essentially, as soon as you put a unit on the ground floor, it has to meet that flood control measure. Now, one of the things we have done is, because we decided to do that, and because we decided to give ground floor units, we didn't put, because of accessibility laws, we didn't put like a big plinth on the southern side of the building. We didn't put a big ramp and a bunch of other things that are really unattractive. We actually flipped the accessibility upside down, and by this being an elevator building, all of the accessibility for those townhouses actually comes from the second floor. And by doing that, that allows us to actually create porches. It actually allows us to create something that looks like little townhomes that are, very quaint and little cute. They've got little facade detailing and things like that don't, it doesn't look like a giant apartment building. It actually looks like 5 little kind of, very distinct units on 9th Street. And we believe that we've done a very good job of that in terms of breaking that down and not having it look like this just homogeneous facade. And we've done that with color and materials and other things. And so, Franklin Creek, as part of this, it's going to essentially serve as a public park, because we're working with county trails to figure out how that's all going to go together. Carp Avenue, again, we're at the sidewalk level. We're not sinking it down. We're not raising it up. We're not trying to make it more than it is. It's a small commercial space with some small commercial offices above. We've actually reduced, since you guys originally saw this, we've actually reduced our commercial square footage from 6,000 originally to 4,000. It's a pretty significant hit in terms of, and we haven't changed the number of units or anything like that. And so, our second and third floor, again, we've rotated sections of the buildings. We've sawtoothed it. We've done everything we can do to not give you guys these huge facades that just, kind of follow the setbacks, which is so typical of these types of developments. And then the third floor, Planning Commission came back, we had all this, and they said, hey, can you guys cut 3 feet off of the front of those units on the western side to make it a little bit less imposing from the one dominant view as you come east on Carpinteria Avenue? We said, sure, absolutely. And we went and did it, and these drawings reflect that. So we've, Mr. Klintner, actually, we negotiated a lot of things on the fly at Planning Commission and felt that we gave them a lot of the things. We gave them everything that they asked for. So we've gone through various iterations, but we feel that what we've done here is something very, very unique. Again, we've created 5 little unique units, and then a 6th one at the second floor over here. And they all look different. They all have different facade articulations and colors and materials and things. And we've done so because, again, we don't want this monotonous-looking streetscape. We've tried to make these as pleasant as possible in terms of what they are. The Carp Avenue side has evolved, and we came in, and when we first showed it to you, there were 2 huge buildings with a narrow space between them and everything else. Well, we didn't do that. We said, look, The parking garage, we pushed it back as far as we could get it. We have to have 30 feet anyway to the gate for fire. We pulled back the commercial space above. You know, this building got substantially smaller, and then we opened up this public entry into both the commercial space and the apartment building above. And so, you know, we feel like we've done a pretty good job of sort of mitigating, you know, kind of all these different pieces. And so on the western side, again, you can see we've pushed everything back as much as possible. We've done some variations in the facades, colors, and balconies and things like that. We've gotten away from having just, you know, strips of railing all the way across the apartment building. We've actually given them planter boxes out on the lower patios. We've managed to develop our parking garage so that it is it doesn't have to be artificially ventilated. We've actually done this with screens instead, so that we don't have to have a big vent stack sticking up out of the roof of this thing, which would be even taller than the building. And our materials, you know, we've gone from Sea Ranch, which is a very kind of minimalistic, you know, wood-looking, simplistic, kind of clean, modern forms, to something that actually has given, you know, where we have plaster, and we have cement board, and we have wood siding, and we have concrete, and we have all these various things, and then we have them all in various colors, and now they integrate into a complex that actually looks like it feels like it belongs. And so, and then lastly, I just want to point this out because this did come up. So Pacific Auto Body, there was a huge concern about the hedge and about how this would work from a traffic standpoint. So we actually did a study here, and we've actually included it. And right now, when you pull a truck out to the driveway on Pacific Auto Body, you get a 145-degree viewing angle, which is not great on a curve. But with our project going in and that hedge coming out, you get a 185-degree viewing angle, which is substantially better. And that's if there's a car coming out of our project. If there's no car there, you get 195, which is about as good as it's going to get, because otherwise you're going to get into the trees over here, and it's just not going to, you're not going to see any further. So we feel that we've actually done, you know, from a safety measure, we feel we took it seriously when it was brought up, and we feel that we've addressed that. So, and so with that, I'm gonna yield the rest of my time to Wiley.
Thank you, Mike. Mayor Clark, council members. I understand your frustration here. I sent you all a letter. I believe you received it on Friday. And that letter laid out the state law, as staff and the city attorney have to you. And that letter goes through the state law issues, and specifically how the state has come in here and why it is required, especially that harmonization. It's difficult for an attorney to even decipher what they mean by some of that. But the fact of the matter is, and beyond the scope of that letter, there are three things that I want to talk to you about. One, being brief here, first is the state law. Second is the process that this project has gone through. And the third is the precedent and the dangerous precedent that would be set by denying or further conditioning this project. So first, with the state law. Now, the city attorney and staff have have put a lot of effort into this. And again, as I was saying before, I understand your frustration here, feeling like your hands are tied. And the fact of the matter is, the state came in here, and they did. And that is frustrating, because why are you here if the state's going to tell you what to do? I understand that. I understand where you're coming from with that. Having said that, the state density bonus law does apply here. And the factors that the city attorney has laid out to you in the December presentation that they provided for you, each one of those factors regarding harmonization, every single one points to approval of this project. Now, again, with the state law, I I understand that it's frustrating that the state has stepped in here. But another thing to keep in mind is that the state is continuing to encroach here. Another example, a couple of examples of that are laid out in my letter. One is Assembly Bill 2797, and then another one is Senate Bill 423, which specifically amends Senate Bill 35 and takes away more discretion and applies to the coastal zone in January 1 of 2025 for certain projects. So it's just getting worse. It's not going to get better. And by denying projects like this that are trying to comply and trying to work through the process, it's just going to get much worse beyond that. So that brings me to my second point, which is the process. This project has gone through a substantial review process. I understand that people in the audience today and certain opponents may not think it's went far enough. But as you've heard, there have been numerous changes. Your process has worked to this point. It's brought about changes despite the state law. And denying this project now is going to set a very dangerous precedent that the process didn't work. The applicant has tried and has made numerous revisions, and if this project is now denied, it'll send message to future developers to either wait for the state to come in, and this is the dangerous precedent that's being set, wait for the state to come in and further take away that discretion so that you can build exactly what no one wants, including my client, which is major development here at 45 feet or higher, which potentially could be allowed right now under the density bonus law, 45 feet, I believe. No one wants that. My client doesn't want that. And he wants to work with this council, and he has worked with the previous discretionary review boards. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about my letter or about this presentation. I understand the frustration, but the law is the law, and it does apply here. And with that, I will yield the rest of my time to Mr. Klentner, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
How are you? I do want to say, Brian and Nick, I thought the staff report was excellent. It gave me a lot of insight and a lot of good ideas and a lot of things. And instead of like bringing them back up again and again, the ability to maximize this lot, which I had no desire to. And my major point, I guess, is that, I live here. I have other properties here. My friends live here. We're trying to bring housing here. We're trying to bring young professionals here. We're trying to bring some low-income housing here. We're not trying to diminish your house's value or their house's value or any of my other properties' values. We're trying to increase Carpinteria's beachiness and warm feeling, and by not maximizing what we could do, we're trying to walk a tightrope. This harmonization, it's such a odd word to try to use practically, but we've tried. We met with a group, City Council, ARB. We met with ARB 3 times. We've been asked to modify certain things. Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you make this look more like a residential area? We have literally agreed to everything. They said the 9th Street people, I had a workshop with them, said, these telephone poles get hit by the garbage trucks all the time. Do you think you could do something about them? So they're gone. I am happy to work in this project, the next project, whatever I can. I love it here, and I'm happy to work here. And if you guys have suggestions that are possible to make the project better, I'm all ears. But there are certain things, like you brought up the floodplain. I already lose 2 feet, right? That Lavender Court, which is 32 feet. 840 Linden is 34 feet. If those projects were now, they would be 36 feet, they'd be 35 feet. They would be taller than the project I have now. And they didn't use state, they just came in and asked for it and they got it. So, I don't know. I live here. I have lunch at Zucker's. I have dinner at Little Dom's. I go grocery shopping at Albertsons. I see you on the street. I see everybody around. I don't want to make something that I'm not going to make everybody happy. It's going to be impossible. But I'm going to try to make as many people happy and try to provide some housing where I can and how I can. So I hope that you will approve this project so that I can break ground and build something. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do. For the applicant or for the planner, the roof. Why don't you use a flat roof as opposed to what you propose now?
Yeah, no, I'll get okay. So it's a great question, actually, and you may remember. Actually, Brian, can I have the? So, yeah, we're happy to answer any questions you guys have. This is a discussion. So I actually have the original document that you guys saw. This is what you guys saw in December of 2021, and so we had a big box of a concept diagram, and one of the things that we had in there were flat roofs everywhere. As we developed this project, the ARB actually, they were the ones who actually stressed. They said, look, if you guys want to get your plate heights down and things like that, we actually believe that, pitched roofs are the way to go here, and you guys could conventionally frame it, and you guys could get some volume inside, but you wouldn't have to, you wouldn't have these just sort of, kind of boring 1960s looking flat roofs. Now, we're not opposed to it from a standpoint of, architecture. We can make anything work. But we actually developed our pitched roofs and how they were offset ridge and everything else. We actually developed that with the ARB. So, but I would like to point out, so just at a straight flat roof building, if you were to build one, if you were to design one, let's just assume that flood was no issue and you just were able to, and you had a perfectly flat site. You have a 12-foot floor to ceiling in your parking garage because you've got ducting and fire sprinklers and drain lines and everything else. And that's what's required in one of these podiums. You have a 20-inch podium, you have a 9-foot ceiling, a 20-inch floor section, a 9-foot ceiling, and a 12-inch flat roof, okay? That's 34'6". That is not 30 feet. And by the time you actually are allowed to get to the types of density that both zoning and the additional state bonus density allows, because of the sizes of the sites, and because you have to provide parking, or actually you don't have to provide parking anymore, but for the residential, but we are, you're over 30 feet anyway. And so, again, we can work within that dynamic. Yes, theoretically, we could go to a flat roof and lower the project, but it's not going to be below 30 feet. It's not possible. It's not feasible. It actually would lop off the entire third floor just on the basis of flood control and basic construction. So I hope that clears up a little bit of the question.
But Michael,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that being said, that the pitches of the roof there are some leeway. And we could do the roof in the 3rd Street section as flat, and that would gain you probably another 36 inches in height. So, I mean, there are potential ways of lowering this project. We had thought we'd played with it a lot, but I mean, if it's the difference of us having a project or not having a project and doing a flat roof, we were just directed not to have one. But if at the high point that it's 35.7, and if we can save ourselves 36 inches, and that makes everybody else feel a lot better, like I said, we've complied with anything that's been asked from us, and we will do whatever's asked. We're not looking for a fight, and we're not looking to strong arm anyone. We do want to work, and we do want this to be nice for everyone as we can.
To be clear,
Yeah.
we're talking about the third story.
Yeah,
portion.
just a third story. I think the Ninth Street looks better like the townhouses for the residential area. But I mean, if that saved them, 30, 36 inches and that made everybody happier, then I'm happy to do it. So anyway, cheers.
So how do you come about 24 apartments? Were there other options of having more, or just you set at 24?
So, no, we wouldn't change the number of apartments at all. We have an 18 unit base density for the site, and utilizing the needing the concession for the height, we were able to increase by 50% on the base density, and therefore that's how we established the 24.
And will you consider having more of those units as affordable, or you set on just those units?
Well, if you increase the number of, again, as Mr. Klintner pointed out, if you increase the number of affordable units, it's a tightrope, because the only reason you would do that is to gain what you would gain out of that, which would be more units. So we could actually increase the number of units in the project if we were to add more affordable units. But again, it's going to make the project more dense, it's going to make it bigger, it potentially could make it taller. And the last thing we want to do, certainly, we've already stacked all of the units over the middle section. This is the third floor. We've already stacked all of our units over the middle section of the project. The last thing we want to do is stack 3 stories along any of your street fronts. So it's not appropriate for Carpinteria, and we understand that. Yeah, sure.
I have a question, if I may. How did you all land, and this is a point of education for me, for the affordable housing at low and not very low in terms of income determination?
It's a good question. It's really a factor of just what kind of works for construction costs, quite honestly. If you go to very low, again, you're spending a certain amount per key to get the building built, and at a certain amount, it's so upside down that it actually makes the project not pencil. I mean, construction costs are right now absolutely out of control, as I'm sure you've probably heard. And at least Mr. Klintner is a builder, and so he understands way better than I do, how that works. But, at a certain point, when it doesn't pencil anymore, it doesn't make any sense. And so these projects, despite this sort of conception that, they're just money makers, hand over fist, the cost of construction makes the buyback on these projects actually years, many, many, many years to do so. But Mr. Klintner's vested in this town. Mr. Klintner lives here. This is for his sons. It's not really for him. And so this is not, and at one point he didn't make, and I know we're sort of having a dialogue here, but one point he didn't make is that he beat out, how many, 2 Orange County developers for the, New York and Orange County developers for this site, who would have come to you with something a whole lot bigger and something a whole lot less Carpinteria. So I hope that answers your question. So.
I guess that's it. Excuse me. We got a couple speaker slips here. First one's Leslie Gascoigne. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Leslie Gascoigne, and first of all, I'd like to thank the City Council for hearing this appeal. It seems unethical and absurd to violate the integrity of Carpinteria's well-thought-out general plan for 3 measly low-income units. These one-bedroom affordable homes account for 1/8 of the smaller units of this oversized project. These low-income units all have only one bedroom, which is not sufficient room for a family. It's also unrealistic to think that a couple who could logistically share a one-bedroom would each be employed in a low-income service job in Carpinteria. More likely, this monstrosity of a project will only provide a home for 3 young, transitory service industry employees. The 19 market rate units will simply increase the need for yet more low-income housing to accommodate the increased workforce needed for all of the many services that an increased population demands. The buyers that could afford these units may not be as interested in maintaining our small, friendly, caring, and family-oriented beach town. Many of them could end up as second homes or VRBOs. We need to challenge the density bonus law, or we can sit back and watch Carpinteria turn into every other overcrowded, overdeveloped, generic city you can find anywhere throughout San Diego, Orange County, LA, and the Bay Area. Again, I want to encourage all residents of California to support our neighborhood voices. I spoke about this a few weeks ago at a city council meeting. It's an initiative that will be specific to land use and zoning issues that cities and counties are currently experiencing with the state demand for more affordable housing. This initiative would bring back democracy to the development process by eliminating new state housing laws. Local control would be restored to residents, city councils, and county board of supervisors. And there would be no need for this ambiguous harmonization. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your, thank you for your comments. Mike Wondolowski. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. I'm Mike Wondolowski with Carpinteria Valley Association. The purpose of the state laws is to get more housing capacity. As staff clarified verbally here, that's number of people. It's not to build larger units than would otherwise be able to be built on a given site. In this case, the additional height and expanded lot coverage allowed under the density bonus law is due to the size of the units being built, including 4 townhouses. If the applicant wanted the same number of units, but with the same number of bedrooms, but 3,000 square feet or 4,000 square feet, would they be allowed to build the whole thing at 45 feet high? That's kind of what's implied here. Of course they wouldn't. That's just not appropriate. That's not harmonization of these laws. The project's entitled to additional units, and the height and lot coverage exceedances only is required to accommodate the total number of units. If smaller units fit without requiring the concessions, then that meets the purpose of the density bonus law while not violating our local general plan and zoning. Another question that appears not to be answered about the project is how many jobs would be created by the commercial part of it, and what would be the income level of those jobs. The net generation of housing in the project of 24 units is then subtracted down by the housing for the people serving in those probably low-income jobs. If those jobs don't pay enough to afford the market rate rentals, the benefit of the 3 low-income units vanishes, and then we start digging the hole even deeper. We urge you to deny the project for good planning principles, for the good of this community, and because approving it is not what is required to meet the density bonus requirements and the Housing Accountability Act. That would be true harmonization. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Salant.
I have a laser.
Turn it on.
Yeah, it says on.
You got a pointer too.
Okay. I am speaking, I am a member.
Can you hang on a sec?
Chair, I believe Commissioner Slant has, I guess, in speaking in her individual capacity, but Commissioner Slant has a PowerPoint presentation that she would like your authorization to share and
Yes,
present.
so you're not speaking as Commissioner Salant, but as a private citizen?
Yes.
Okay, well, you have my permission.
Thank you. I also would like to add to that, that I am a trained architect, that I have been studying building plans and housing plans in particular for more than 50 years, and I've given a lot of thought to this project. There have been many, many comments about it. What I wish to address are the unintended consequences of the new housing laws and the new density laws. And that has to do with privacy and with sunlight. Also, I would like to say that the plans that one can see in the City Hall are at a scale of 10th scale, which is a very unusual scale that you have to have an engineering scale to use it. There are almost no dimensions on the plan, so you have to study and carefully measure everything out. So this is the second floor as the plan shows. What it doesn't show, it's not going forward. How do I get it to go forward? There's Brian, to the next slide. What it doesn't show on.
Could you give her the mouse so she can control?
Yes, that would be perfect.
Sure, thank you. Okay. So on the next, okay, so this is the second floor. What the plans don't show, unless you study them very carefully, is how much of the second floor will be covered by the walkway for the third floor. What I've shown here in red, that's all covered area. The distance from here down to a small opening for sunlight is about 40 feet. It will be, with all these, the height is about 9 feet, I think, in there, perhaps 9 or 10 feet. All these hard surfaces, I think it will tend to magnify the sounds of people walking through. The next thing that I would like to address is privacy. As you can see, there's a stair down here on Carp Ave. It goes all the way through, so you come up the stair, then you come through here, and it's a public walkway all the way down to 9th Street. It also will be used by all the people living here as well as the people on the third level coming down to get to the street or to the garage. It's quite, as you can see, it's quite public. Now, on the front of each of these units in blue, these are bedrooms. And the bedrooms, because of the fire code, each bedroom has to have a window. The sill height cannot be more than not more than 41 inches above the floor, and it will be, I think, about 5 feet wide. That's a big window, and this is the public walkway. So people are walking right next to your bedroom. I ask you, city council members, would you be comfortable with somebody walking that close to your bedroom where you're sleeping or your children are sleeping? And this poor guy down here at the corner, he gets more than anybody coming down there. So are there ways that one could address this that do not get into all the tangle of the housing laws, the density bonus, and then this and that? So these units, so I looked at it, and these units are very generously sized. They're about 1,200 square feet. If you look at the document in the City Hall, each one is a little different, and I can't tell whether it's included, the walls are included. So anyway, this is a typical unit. You can see it's 56 feet long, and this is the main living area, as shown here. It's 44 and a half feet. If you take 6 feet off of this unit, you make it 44.6. You reduce this area to 37. That still is an astonishingly generous space for living, eating, dining. And I took the bathroom here, and I just turned it 90 degrees. This is one bedroom and its bathroom. This is the other bedroom and its bathroom, assuming that there's some accessibility issues here. So I just took 6 feet out of each unit. And when you do that, this is what the second floor looks like. You get sunlight from the third floor coming through. You get bigger area for sun. And from the street, it actually will look more inviting because you'll see sunlight filtering down. in terms of comparing, this is what they propose, this is what you get if you add 6 feet, and the scale of these two drawings is the same. If you widen it in terms of privacy, you get a lot more space. And if you put planters in front of the units with the 6 feet that you took off before, you can say if you had a planter there, you get even more privacy in front of each unit. This is having planters in front of each unit. This is widening the public planter slightly, and still you get more privacy except for these poor units down here. Which you could actually address this by, this here is living dining. You could put the bedroom and bath down here and the living dining up there. And this is comparing, this is the existing here, and this is what you get if you reduce slightly the size of the unit to give more privacy to bedrooms and more sunlight to the second floor. As I said before, these are this kind of thing are the unforeseen consequences of these new housing laws. I think that one has to both look much more carefully at the plans, but I think also that there is some room for towns like us, for the city council, to make these units more livable. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Don Risden. Welcome, Don.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. As I sat here and listened to the staff do an excellent job of presenting this project, it's been through so many review processes, and it comes down to the bonus density law and the Housing Act, both of which are law. And so this project meets that requirement, and also the staff recommends approval of this project. And that staff is very well versed, lawyers, planners. I think that you ought to look at their recommendation and accept it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. John Nicoli.
Good evening, all. As most of you know, I'm the manager at Arbor Trailer Park, which is directly affected by this project. On that particular side on 9th Street, we have 27 units of affordable housing. This is quite a burden onto those homeowners. They're all one-level units. They're all low to the ground. This is going to be difficult for the folks that live along that property. What I think the city needs to do is look at 9th Street as a package, the whole thing, not just what this project is going to do in front of the townhouses. We need a comprehensive plan from the city for a project to redevelop 9th Street to a place, because this project is also going to put traffic from 9th Street onto, because it's going to be difficult to exit onto Carpinteria Avenue. I think a lot of traffic is going to come into this rear driveway onto 9th Street and then go up to the corner at Hawley at a stop sign, and I think it's going to get very congested. And that's in addition to all the people that live on 9th Street already. I really think it's important that the city commit to a program of rehabilitating 9th Street in totality, not just a piece in front of this project. And I know the developer is building that out. But I think the city has to commit, because this has been in the work plan many times and has gone from a priority item to, and it keeps getting banged down and get lower and lower and pushed lower and lower. People in 9th Street are parking on dirt. The dust is crazy. We need to take care of the residents that already live there, who are paying taxes, who are paying rent in the apartments, who also pay taxes. We need to take care of the people that already live there. I'm sure this project is going to go forward in some iteration, but I really think it's important that we take care of those who are on 9th Street, and this city has to commit to those residents, not just to this developer. In addition, there was also talk about 9th Street and a turnaround. I'm on one of the board of directors for the fire department. I don't believe there is any plans of the fire department to do a turnaround. The equipment's too large to turn around. It is, and I have spoken to all of the battalion chiefs, of which there are 3 in the city, and their intention is that when we pull into 9th Street, we will back out, back to Holly. And that's what they do now when there's a situation. We've had a couple of fires on the street. And so, every time, and then when we start to convert from head-in parking to parallel parking, as this project is proposing, we are eliminating parking spaces, not creating parking spaces. And now we're going to have 5 townhouses facing this, where we're going to have cars that are probably going to park on 9th Street, adding to the burden. I really think the city council needs to take into account the entire project, which includes 9th Street, not just this development. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts. Bob Franco.
Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome, Bob.
Councilman. It's more than likely there's probably going to be a redevelopment in this area someday. Just hopefully not this one as presently proposed. One of my big concerns is that this project has an aura of mendacity surrounding this development. I don't think the developers have been entirely forthcoming to the council and to the community about their project. Just consider all the fuss with the ARB and the fact that we are here tonight to consider an appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of this project. I was born just down the street on Holly Avenue in 1941. The owners of a business next door, Pacific Auto Body, are my cousins, John and Reyes. So I'm very familiar with the area and the people living there. One of the most bothersome things about this project, it appears to their total indifference towards their neighbors. The proposed 36-foot height of the building would not only block the sunlight for many residents, but also vastly exceed the height limits enjoyed by our community for years. If you approve this project with a height increase such as this, you will be setting a precedent that we will never be able to undo, and we will have a building blight that we will never recover from. One last thing here. Most of us here don't know about CPDs, PRDs, CEQA guidelines, and bonus density plans regarding developments such as this. That is your elected responsibility. We can only tell you that your community disapproves of this design as it is now, and that it would be a horrendous mistake to approve it. It is up to you to listen to your residents that are telling you to vote to reject this development, or the developers revise this project to one that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Suzanne Garrett. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is the first time I've ever spoken in front of a city council, so it's a red letter day for me. I've lived here for 24 years. My husband and I have raised our family here. But my dog in this fight is not about living here. I don't live in Carpinteria proper. I live in Toro Canyon. But I am a business owner and I'm a job creator. And we have jobs that we have tried to fill with local talent for years now, and we always end up going someplace else. And these are jobs like accountants and marketing majors and social media managers, and so sort of that first year out of college, second career job that we're trying to fill. And we have a really difficult time filling them. People want to live and work in the same community. These are young people that want to bike to work, they want to walk to work, and we just don't offer that. And we end up losing that many times. Matter of fact, to be able to fill the positions, we end up filling the positions in other parts of the country before we fill them here in Carpinteria. So I guess my question to this group would be, if not this, what? And if not now, when? And as a business owner, I'm asking you guys to move the ball forward. We need places for young talent to come and live and work and to have their families and develop their own businesses and become job creators, because we don't have that now. That's it.
Thank you for your comments. Rita Salm. Welcome, Rita.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for all your patience. The staff report for this project is biased, in my opinion. The proposed project will not bring workforce housing to Carpinterians or to those who work here because all but 3 units will be market rate housing. If low-income housing is going to cost over $2,000 a month, you can just imagine what above-income housing is going to cost. Workforce housing is not young professionals. It's people who work here. They may work as a cook or a caretaker or a gardener or anything. Doesn't necessarily mean they're young professionals. The other day, a City of Carp employee told me that when she accepted her job a year ago, she thought that she and her husband would move here to Carp. But she couldn't find anything they could afford, so she commutes. If she can't afford to live here as a professional, can a caregiver, a teacher, or a cook live here? Recently, there was an article in the New York Times about Paris and what they're doing to keep local workers living in their city. Right now, this subsidized housing project, similar to public housing in New York after World War II, there is now a 30% occupancy by people who work in the city. Their goal is to make it 60%. Although we are not a huge metropolitan city by any chance, but can't we do better for those who work here? Taking actions to avoid legal suits is unethical and does not represent the residents of Carpinteria. Rather, the present interpretation by the staff of the City of Carpinteria. Denial of the facts is not ethical either. Can we do better? I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you. Zy Van Antwerp. Welcome.
Hi. Yeah, it's XC, short for
X.
Alexandra Van Antwerp.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Maybe next time.
That's okay. Thank you for being here, and here I'm glad that I'm able to speak. The proposed multi-use development is currently under review by the council to assess its compliance with local zoning regulations, state housing laws, and the California Coastal Commission. In particular, its alignment with the city's general plan, the California Coastal Plan, and its harmony with state housing laws are being scrutinized. Regarding environmental consideration, the project does not qualify for the Class 32 categorical exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, guidelines, because it does clash with our general plan and has adverse impacts on the environment, including traffic and neighborhood compatibility concerns. I strongly disagree with the analysis conducted by city staff. Qualifications to apply the CEQA exemption to this proposal have not been met under the guidelines as stated. Additionally, the development seeks to leverage California's density bonus law to increase building height and density beyond zoning limits, with parking ratios favoring the developer rather than the community. It's a stretch. While purportedly designed to harmonize with the requirements of the Housing Accountability Act, the majority of units cater to above moderate income residents, with only a small fraction, only 3, allocated for lower income housing. Critics argue that the development scale and intensity are more characteristic of affluent areas like Montecito and San Francisco, rather than reflecting the needs and character of Carpinteria. Furthermore, there are concerns that approving such a project set a precedent for future developments that undermine the city's general plan and leverage, again, I say that in quotes, state housing and environmental laws to the detriment of the community. Overall, there is skepticism among residents that the proposed development truly aligns with the interests of Carpinteria, and fear that critical issues are being overlooked in favor of developer interests. I urge you, council members, to continue to fight for our small beach town character and reject the proposal. Despite the city staff's report's caution regarding potential legal repercussions from developers in the event of further appeal sought and granted by the California Coastal Commission, remain steadfast in your decision. Carpinteria is not for sale. We will stand up in the highest court of the land to keep carp. Let's preserve our community's essence for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one is David Sanremiago. I'm sure I butchered that, and I apologize.
Close enough, Samaniego.
You knew who I was talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to say, as a local young professional, that I'd greatly welcome a development like this. I'd had to commute. I've been working in CARP for over 8 years now, and I've had to. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I've been having to commute into CARP for over 8 years now, and finally found a place in Carpinteria. But my commute is still about 10 minutes long. Something like this, I would be walking and riding my bike everywhere. Honestly, it would be great for me. I've also went to Westmont, and I work at Procore. And just due to the lack of housing in the area, I've lost a lot of friends and a lot of coworkers to cities like San Diego. So just in general, I think it would be great for the retention of young professionals and the attraction of young professionals like myself. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Melanja Jones? Did I get your first name right?
My name's Melania. It rhymes with lasagna. You guys want to remember that? So, let me pull up my notes. This has been absolutely fascinating. It's really a pleasure to see all this in action. I've lived in Carpinteria since 2007. I was not fortunate enough to be born here, but once I came here, I fell in love, and I want to live here forever. I've lived in various apartments around Carp for years. I live in Singing Springs right now. I know Justin from work. He knows that I live here because he always sees me leaving my bike to bike back and forth. And he said, hey, let me tell you about this place that you bike by when I go over that 9th Street bike bridge, and let me know what you think. This presentation has been absolutely fascinating. I've learned a lot about Carpinteria. It's been really interesting actually seeing some of the people that I read about in the Coastal News talk about this and about the development itself. It's reinforced that a lot of thought goes into this whole process, and I'm super impressed by how many concessions and how many changes they made just to arrive at this stage in the planning process. As a terminal renter here, I want to eventually be able to live here permanently, to make this my home forever. So I understand there has to be some development at some point. We'd all really like it to remain the same forever, but at some point there has to be some development. And I would echo the lady who spoke about there has to be some places for young professionals, and I can't even consider myself young anymore, to have somewhere to live. I know a lot of people in my age group who lived here for years in all these various apartment buildings that I've rented that eventually had to move because there was nowhere else to live. There just wasn't any inventory here. So if there is going to be development, it sounds like from what the state is saying and all the legals talk earlier that there has to be, I think it's really important that it be done in an urban area. This isn't on the bluffs. This isn't in the farmland on Baylord. That is an area where there's a high walk score. Anyone who lives there can walk down to Linden. They can walk over to buy their groceries at Smart and Final Albertsons. They can walk to the beach. They can bike various places where they want to work. And that'll be done by somebody local who's, I think, trying to be pretty sensitive to the whole process. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more speaker slips over there, Brian? Thank you, Brian. G.T. White. Welcome, G.T.
Good evening. I'd like to second the comments of Mike Wondolowski and Exie Van Antwerp. I think there's a better way to harmonize. I think we're faced with a mess, and we're faced with a mess that is largely avoidable. The elephant in the room is that this is not a pure housing development. There is a mixed-use component, and that mixed-use component is not entitled to the bonus density. So to the extent that that's a significant mixed-use component, the absence of the parking and the mixed use might reduce the size, bulk, and scale to the point where we wouldn't be asking for those height concessions. It's interesting to me, I feel staff dropped the ball on this one. They treated development like a foregone conclusion. They decided that harmonization would prioritize making exceptions to our local plan rather than, and that's supposed to be more consistent with the Coastal Act than protecting the views, than looking at the fact that we're concentrating housing in an area that is channelized for a reason. So we didn't look into the safety issues. We didn't look into ways of making it consistent by not giving those concessions to a non-residential use. And you have a fourth option before you. You can deny, which I encourage you to do, but you can also continue and find out more. If you have questions about safety, if you have questions about whether you could work with the developer on a pure residential project and not have to make those height concessions, or produce more housing by looking at the size and the configuration options that have been brought to you tonight, where you get more housing for the impacts that we're having. But we don't have to maximize those impacts by adding on to non-residential uses and having parking for those non-residential uses and then adding 5 feet to the building. And we're looking at size, bulk, and scale and canyonization of Carp Ave that starts here, and those views, those mountain views are going to go, and they're irreplaceable. And we're doing it for 3 units, and we're not asking for any proportionality. Like the developer is asking for more than they're giving you, and they're asking for more than they're giving you on something that is not a pure residential development. And you do not have to accept that as harmonization. You can demand more harmonization based on the actual risks, based on the fact that there's components to this project that are not residential and are not entitled to those concessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Geety. Patrick O'Connor, please. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and staff. Agree with a number of points that have been made, and I just wanted to expand on a point that was made during the Architectural Review Board and tonight. And by the way, I'm a member of the Architectural Review Board, but speaking as a private citizen. The notion of using the riparian setback as a calculation in the lot coverage. I think that's leaning towards, taking advantage of something that's not buildable. And this is a point that, I'm adamant about for any development. If the area is not buildable, it shouldn't be part of the density calculation. So that's a point. Another point I'd like to make is the notion about a couple of the comments that have been made about the commercial mixed-use development. And again, leaning in different directions to take advantage of those provisions. One of them is that the drawings and the provisions for setback assume that 9th Street is the rear of the property. And it's therefore has the setbacks associated with it that are defined by the rear of the property. Those are front doors, actually. Those are residential front doors on that 9th Street. And so I think a more nuanced view of how the setback should be applied should take advantage of or at least consider what the use of the property is in that area. 9th Street is a residential street, and there's commercial setback limits, not residential setback limits. So the combination of that riparian setback not being buildable and a reasonable residential setback on 9th Street would combine to give a lot less pressure, which I think is what's creating a lot of tension, put a lot less pressure on 9th Street. So those are my thoughts, and appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Patrick Crooks. Welcome, Patrick.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thanks for looking at this tonight. I think I'm going to surprise a lot of folks tonight and maybe lose some friends that think that CARP has to stay the way it is right now forever, right? I grew up here. I've been by that property hundreds of times, I guess maybe thousands of times, right? So I'm lucky enough to live right down the street and own a home. I live in a little 800 square foot house, my wife and I and my 2 kids. I think we all know there's going to be a lot of change to come in this town, mostly because of what the state is doing with handcuffing, really, our general plan, our policies, our processes. I've been following this specific project the last year through the ARB and through the Planning Commission, and I think most of us recognize those well-intentioned folks that you've all appointed on those those appointments. They're doing their best to bring you a project, as well as the staff, knowing that there's a dozen of these in the pipeline. I'm an environmental consultant by trade, an arborist and a biologist, but you know, I think a lot of folks don't understand CEQA, don't understand really what is coming with the state looking to increase density. And so I'm really looking at this project from a standpoint of somebody who wants to retain the charm that this town does have in the open spaces that we do have left, and that means getting to those, starting to tick off those RENA numbers. We really do need to focus these types of projects where infill is gonna achieve harmony like we're talking about. This developer, I believe, does want CARP to remain CARP for what it can be, and the minute you put any structures above 1 story, most folks in town think that loses the character and charm of that. I think there's a lot of little nuanced things that we can do on this project to maybe lower some of the elevations, maybe respect the 9th Street dilemma. I mean, hearing about that intersection specifically, I already know 60 cars coming in and out of there every day with the additional traffic is going to be an issue as it stands. So I hope we can really address those things. But I don't envy your job here tonight. I think there's going to be a lot of folks upset if this project does move forward. But I do think the state's had their say, and we really are left with what we're left with. So thanks for taking the time to look at this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, I think. Okay. John Gonzalez. Welcome, John.
I'm here to disagree about that, the Carp Ave, the safety. As a matter of fact, I'm the one that brought it up. Can we get the floor plan there? Now, we've been dealing with that hedge for about 15 years now. That's not the issue. The issue here is, if you look at the new building, it's only 5 feet setback from the sidewalk to the north. My building next door is 18 feet setback. People next to me, 18 feet. Why? So we can see down the road. Now, Carp Ave comes in an angle. It's not straight out. Makes it tough. Not just for me, my neighbor, people pulling away from the curb down the street. That's a 35-mile-an-hour zone, and it's a tough one. And if you look down to the building, it gives me a window of about 10 feet to look to the north. I was checking it out today. There's a power pole right where that's going to be. And then you got parking. I don't agree with what they said about the safety. It's going to be an issue, and that should be looked into. If you like, come down to the shop, stand in the driveway, look to the north, you'll see what I'm talking about. Enough of that. The picture of the mountains that they showed earlier, I don't know where that was taken from, but if you stand in front of my shop and look toward the mountains, you'll see them. I didn't see anything there. So I kind of disagree with that. Yeah, right there. I don't know, it said 9th Street, but if I were to go there tomorrow, I'm sure I'd see the mountains. Foggy day, I don't know. But that's a view that the people on 9th Street are going to miss. It's a nice one, too. And as far as the size of that development, yeah, it's big. The bad things that come with it is the traffic. I know we're all planning to get rid of the cars sooner or later, but that's not going to happen 5 years when this place is in place. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts. Joseph Vienna? Did I get that name right?
Yeah. Close enough. Hello. Mr. Mayor, council people. John brought up my point about the view on 9th Street. When you're back there, you see the mountains. Can I see the rendering?
You want the photo or the rendering?
The rendering or the photo with the story poles? Yeah, so in this thing, it looks like the mountains are obscured by clouds. I don't know, I can't tell. The white thing in the back, that's the mountains. But anyway, when I was standing there, at on the south side of 9th Street, looking at that, you would see the mountains through the story poles. So I would believe that the structure was going to block out the mountain view. Yeah, like that too. That's kind of a different one. But you could see if you went down further on 9th Street, yeah, you would see it. And the safety he brought up, it's, there was a time 24 or 5 years ago, you could cross Carpinteria Avenue in front of my house. I live right on the other side of the creek. Now it's a gamble every day. I just wonder, when I'm going to hit by a car because I have to park on the outside across the street. You stand there, there's people driving 40, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour in the middle of the night. So traffic's an issue. But another thing I see happening is, as people complain about the gentrification, this and that, people are getting pushed out. But another type of gentrification that I see happening in Carpinteria is business gentrification, where blue-collar businesses, light manufacturing, things like that are getting pushed out to the side in favor of coffee houses and wine bars and cafes and things that are more targeted to newer people coming in because that's what they want. These manufacturing businesses like the rental yard and the irrigation people and the body shop, they're pretty quiet. People come in, do their business, and leave. But then when you start bringing the tourist element in, then you have problems. You have people out having a good time. They're going to have a good time, at other people's expense. Every weekend, I got people riding through my mobile home park and coming up and peering into my home. And I have to remind them that it's private property. And I don't like to be like that. But, I'm just tired of tourists coming in and treating my neighborhood like it's Disneyland, and if I did the things in their neighborhood that they do in mine and around my home, they'd be calling the police, So when you push out these other businesses and then people are going to move in and they're going to complain about the noise or the trucks, and I've seen it happening already, that's not a good thing. Carpinteria has always kind of been a blue-collar town. And I know it's changing, the demographic is changing, and you want to attract new business, and new business is going to be tech. So, those people need a place to live and stuff. But to push out existing business the way you are, all the way down Carp Avenue, where they're at the row, where they're making people move across the street to the other side, to the freeway side, because they want one side all, restaurants or whatever, things like that. I don't think that's really right. So what's going on right now? Anyway, I'm not going to say positive or negative about the project. I just wanted to make those points out about what's going on and those impacts.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
Fred Shaw. Welcome back, Fred.
Good evening, council, staff. Mine is more a suggestion. If you bring up the original picture, that one right there, if you look at Carp Avenue kind of starts with a giant curve, and the project is kind of in the middle of it. Having pulled out of Arbor, where my friends live hundreds of times, that whole area is really unsafe to make left turns. So I don't think pulling out of the driveway of the project as shown is going to be a whole lot safer. What I would suggest is that if the city has the project go forwards, that they would change the speed limit from 35 to 25 going around that long extended curve, because as we all know, any of us who drive in that area, hardly anybody ever goes just 35 miles an hour. And pulling out left can be a very dangerous thing. And I don't think the city wants the liability. So I'd suggest changing it to 25, which it becomes a block and a half farther down.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Fred. That's the last of speaker slips. Anybody else want to? No, we're going to see who else there is. Can you file a speaker slip once you're done? Yeah, sure. No, they're right here. They're small and they're green. But you can talk first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, my name is O'Hara Haggerty, and I've lived on the end of 9th Street for 27 years. And I live right in front of the bridge. I'm very fortunate. It's a wonderful spot. I have a great mountain view. And my concern is that the noise pollution and the rubbish, most people pick up after their dogs, not everyone does. Also, people like to congregate on the bridge to watch the sunset. It's a beautiful spot. Can we have a ordinance where people have to leave at 10 o'clock because people that drink will go down there and they will party and stay later than 10, and it keeps people up. My bedroom's like only feet away from the bridge. So I've had to call the police department many times to ask them to come down there and disperse people from doing their partying there on the bridge past 10 o'clock. So that's a concern. And who's going to pick up the trash down there if there's more people coming down there? Those are my concerns. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? All right, seeing.
I left out something.
Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mayor, for indulging me. If you decide to go forward with this project, I ask you to include a condition that the developer address the privacy issue. As Nick Broboff put it, solve the mystery of the privacy in the bedroom. These, whoever moves into these, it's going to be a much higher rental than low income. I think they'll have a lot of choices. I don't know how sanguine people will feel about having people walk right next to a bedroom. I think I showed it's very easily fixable. So I ask you to please include it as a condition. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody on Zoom, Brian?
Mayor, we have no raised hands.
All right, we will close the public comment period and bring it back to the council.
I'll go first. This is hard. I wish I could make everybody happy, but not tonight. This is the first, let me ask Mac a question. Is there any case laws out there that have cities deny such projects yet, and the results of those?
Through the mayor, yes, there is example case law both approving and denying density bonus law projects and under the Housing Accountability Act. It depends on the facts of the particular action by the local agency, and we can't predict all outcomes. But we're happy to talk through any specific issues that you may have, but there are certainly plenty of cases out there granting or denying applications. I do want to touch on a couple of the comments that I think raise some legal issues that are somewhat related to your question. With respect to density bonus law, there is case law that says an application for a density bonus doesn't require the applicant to strip the project of amenities. So when a project comes in and proposes a certain design, and the council's role or the decision maker's role, unfortunately, is not to look at all the different aspects of the project that, if removed, would make the project compliant. So in one example, there's a case out of Berkeley where the project had an interior courtyard that required it to push out towards the boundaries and asked for a waiver for the setback requirements. And in that case, an appellant challenged the agency's approval of the project, which the agency approved the project, and the court found that the city council in Berkeley wasn't required to strip the project of amenities like an interior courtyard just to comply with state density bonus law, or to minimize the requested incentives, waivers, or concessions. So there's a push and pull there in terms of requiring the project to comply with Coastal Act policies or modifications to the project and changes related to the project. Happy to talk through any of those. And then one other thing with respect to the Class 32 exemption, as cited in the notice of exemption that's prepared in your staff report, that same case, Wilmer versus the City of Berkeley, found that an exemption was applicable there because the exemption applies to standards in the general plan or zoning code ordinance that are applicable to the project. And so when applying density bonus law to eliminate a particular standard or reduce a particular standard, that eliminated or reduced standard is the one that's applicable to the project for the purposes of evaluating both compliance with the general plan policies as well as application of the exemption. So wanted to make those two clarifications. But yes, there's ample case law out there. Happy to talk through any specific issues.
Well, also, we have to make a decision tonight, right? We can't continue this.
Yeah, so what is that schedule? Do we have a limit to the number of public hearings?
So the city, local agencies, state law requires a cap of 5 total hearings. The date is based on application completeness date. Here, I'll have to discuss with staff when that date actually is, but I believe this would be their 4th hearing here tonight based on, since they've kind of finalized this latest project design and come in before the ARB. So to the extent that your council would like to have at least one more hearing about this item, that could potentially be arranged. However, we would encourage you to reach a final decision tonight or provide staff further direction to prepare for that next hearing.
Okay. So this is the first project that our city has really gone through under the new state housing laws, right? It's learning for all of us. And going forward, there'll be more and more projects like these, right? The state has set the standard. They set the precedent, not us. And we have to follow. And if we don't, the lawyer right there is just smiling, ready to do his thing. And it's frustrating. But we have to ask ourselves, what is our goal? Is our goal to provide more housing? Is it to protect our general plan, or both? And we don't have much room to wiggle. We have to make a decision, and unfortunately, I'm glad the developer is willing to work with us. He seems sincere in his comments, and I believe him that he wants what's best for Carpinteria, so I'm in favor to approve this project based on the state mandates and the possibility of builder's remedy coming down the road if we don't do something and making much worse of what can happen. So, yeah.
If I may have a question. There was a few comments that brought up some questions for me that I need some clarification on. Primarily in terms of the 9th Street parking, there was a comment, it didn't make sense in terms of right now there's diagonal parking, even though they're parking in the dirt. And it sounds as though with this project, they would actually be removing parking. And then what is the commercial setback versus residential setback? Can you provide clarification for that, please?
I see the green light. Vice Mayor Alarcon, through the mayor. The second question, or the first question first, the parking. So the proposed project that results in the frontage improvements that would, end up paving that half of 9th Street and putting in the curb and gutter and sidewalk and so forth, would result in new public parking spaces in that reconfigured condition. Currently, it's kind of a free-for-all, so the parking is being done within the city's right-of-way in a manner that maximizes the availability of parking spaces. So some of it, I've seen it, diagonal. A lot of times it's actually heading, backing in so that you can, maximize the number of vehicles that you can fit, up against the rear of the Suncoast site. So there's no doubt that as a result of the street improvements, the frontage improvements that the applicants are required to do, that there will be a reduction in the public street available parking, just because right now there really is no curb gutter designated, edge of the right of way and that sort of thing. So there's no doubt just the physical space won't be there once the improvements are in place as a result of the project. So it's an informal kind of parking situation that goes on there right now.
How many parking spaces would be allowed with the way that the project is proposed, or the?
6 would be if you use the standard dimension that is in the city's engineering manual. But I think so at one point in time, Vice Mayor, the applicant had proposed that on the applicant's dime, he would voluntarily, for a reduction in the one of the development impact fees, that he would, understanding the 9th Street concern about, the improvements that they've been waiting for, and specifically the Arbor Trailer Park folks, that he would go ahead, since he's going to have to do his side of the street anyway, the applicant's going to have to do it, that would be the time that he could take care of those improvements, subtract those from his development fees that are fairly substantial for this project, and do it all at one time. And we kind of thought, wow, that kind of seems efficient. We met with engineering staff, and all of a sudden you start to understand the issues with 9th Street and the things that, have to be done. We talked about the hammerhead, in place of a turnaround, because the turnaround won't work at the end of it. And then it became clear that by having the applicant, kind of run the show, then the city loses its ability, and our engineering staff loses their ability to kind of come in and come up with creative solutions, because it would just be, here's the engineering manual, you go hire your paving contractor, you do it per this standard. Whereas if the city controls that, the applicant does their frontage improvements, and then the city controls the rest of the 9th Street improvements, we may be able to come up with a different solution. Long-winded answer. If you just use the measurement standard of the city now, it's 6 spaces, you may be able to squeeze in a 7th parallel space, depending on how closely folks park together. So we removed, the Public Works staff removed the striping component that would have typically been required, like you see on Linden, where you have your striped designated parking spots. So as part of this project, we removed that requirement to just see if people can, slide in maybe one more car in that parallel arrangement. Oh, and then in terms of the setbacks, I'm sorry. So we did apply the setbacks. So there are both front setbacks for this property. It's considered a through lot. So we have a front setback along the Carpinteria Avenue portion. We have a front setback along the 9th Street portion as well. So the minimum setback for those would be 5 feet, but then would also be based on the measurement of from the center line of both Carpinteria Avenue and 9th Street. I think Nick's going to chime in here.
Thank you, Brian. If I may, Vice Mayor Alarcon, just add on a couple of kind of clarifications here. Maybe I'll start with the setback since that's freshest here. Right, for the commercial plan development district, which the bulk of the property is zoned, that minimum front setback is 5 feet from the property line. So the project as designed complies with that. For that bottom, kind of bottom right-hand corner, what would it be, the southeast corner of the project site, which is the one sliver that's zoned residential, the front setback for that piece is 20 feet, and the project meets that as well. So that driveway entrance is set back 20 feet from the property line, consistent with the setback requirements for that small residentially zoned portion of the property. So as designed, the project's fully compliant with all setback requirements. Going back to, parking in 9th Street, as Brian said, right? 9th Street right now is sort of an informal arrangement. There's no curbs, there's no gutters, there's no sidewalks, there's no striping. Now, a lot of cars can fit in there, but it doesn't meet any kind of standard. It's hard to get in or out of those spaces when it's fully parked out. So as part of this project, the applicant would be obligated to make improvements to his frontage of 9th Street to bring it up to current city code. And so that involves then, bringing in sidewalks, bringing in drainage improvements, formalizing the parking. So to answer your question, yes, there is a net reduction in how many cars conceivably could fit down there. The trade-off, right, is we're making it safer for pedestrians. We're making it function better from a safety standpoint and a circulation standpoint.
So one other question, in terms of those homes that are what would be constructed on 9th Street, would they then have the ability to just park right in front of their homes, or would they have to park in the parking spaces?
Vice Mayor Alarcon, parking on 9th Street is public parking. It's
Right.
first come, first serve.
Mm-hmm.
The
But
units-
in some housing, right, they have designated parking spots.
Not out
I
in the
think-
street typically. So Right. Within that parking podium, there's enough parking that, each one-bedroom unit would be allocated one parking space. Each two-bedroom unit would be allocated 1.5 parking spaces. Whether the applicant intends to actually designate parking or kind of leave that, flexible for tenants to kind of find their own spot, I'm not sure.
Okay, so then that's my question in terms of the developer's ideas or thoughts on that. Will those properties have designated parking spots in the parking lot?
Well, they will. Each unit has a spot. Sorry. Yes, they can have designated spots per unit. So unit
Okay.
23 can have parking spot 23.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, comments from me. First item, which is kind of interesting, with the amount of reviews that this project has gone through, I'm surprised you haven't given it a name yet. So I thought this was kind of odd. Generally speaking, the applicant would come forward with a name to try and create ownership, but, to each his own. I see that. I do like the idea of having residential and commercial mix, trying to honor what we have currently with the zoning requirements along Carpinteria Avenue. I think in doing so, it keeps a consistency throughout. If that were to become residential, some of the changes, I think that may be some of the issues we may face in the future. If in fact residential is allowed along Carpinteria Avenue to come straight up to the street, and then we start seeing multi-floor story units coming in, which may become, quote, required in the future by the state, we may have a lot of challenges and issues. So for that reason, I do see the advantage of having commercial two-story in the front. I think that's a good idea. The challenge that we face, and this is a challenge, is that we definitely will not be able to have everybody satisfied with the outcome of this. We all have to compromise somehow. I've been doing this now for almost 30 years, 17, 18 years on the ARB, and now with the City Council, and this is definitely one of the challenges we've seen and faced. Looking back, 28, 29 years ago, we had a number of controversial projects coming through, and each year after that, we see more where we've tested the envelope, where we had 30 feet before, all of a sudden we started going up a little bit higher. Started with the hotels along, including the Best Western and some of the other ones, and then inclusive of some of the residentials, even along Carpinteria Avenue, where we said no 3 stories ever were to be developed, and they showed up. Because of that, one of the benefits I've seen in having an architect and designer come through with a good project, in my opinion, and through work with the Architecture Review Board and the Planning Commission, a lot of the compromises on things that would become extremely controversial were somewhat mitigated. As an example, the street side, both sides are 2 stories. They honor or come very close to the 30 feet requirement, which I think would be consistent with streetscape. The 3-story units, they are placed inside. So along the street face, you won't see as much of this impact of having a, quote, 3-story there unless you're looking up higher than them. And that area there is flat. There's not much you're going to see there. So that was one of the benefits. The other one is, and going with the sacrifices, we do have a project now that includes parking. In the future, we're looking at the state mandates saying that we may not have to consider parking. Now imagine 9th Street. If we had to add another 30, 40 parking cars parked on 9th Street because they won't fit on Carp Avenue. Because of that, I see us having to compromise somehow, and that compromise would be having to go vertical to include parking on site. The question came up about flat roofs. I think the architect has done a great job articulating that project and development and design quite a bit. I do like the idea of having it, he called it sawtooth, having offsets to where we don't have one straight face that's going to be 2 stories tall, but rather having breakup, making it more individual. I think that's going to help quite a bit. The other things we're taking a look at, the flat roof was one. Flat roof, I like the design that it has right now. And I think by bringing down just a peak won't make that much of a difference. Interior-wise, it's going to be a much nicer design. We've heard a number of comments. Work, live, we heard both. Some people saying we just can't do it here. Others that say that it's possible. Personally, I see it as being a possibility. We all live in Carpinteria. For us, we have the choice. In Carpinteria, literally, we can walk anywhere in the city that we want to. That is one of the huge advantages Carpinteria has, is that we can walk from our houses to the beach, to wherever we want to go. This, again, would be, in my opinion, one of the benefits of this project, because it does sit itself downtown with the ability or availability to be able to walk anywhere these people that live there would like to go. And it may be that they're working out of the area, but it also may be that they're working in the area. Regardless, they're going to be around at least some of the time because they live there. So we will see some of the benefits of them spending money in Carpinteria. I think that's another big advantage we have. I did like the comments made in regards to the design, maybe relocating the bedroom. Take a look at actually that deck area itself. I think having that opened up would create a huge benefit for that. I'm not going to require that, but it's something that you may want to take a look at and consider, because it would open it up. I think solarization, especially when we're going up 50 feet, would be a huge advantage to be able to have that sunlight go down all the way to the base floor. So as an architect, you may want to take a look at that as one of your advantages. Fred Shaw brought up a good point, 25 miles an hour. I think that's inevitable. I think that's something that we have to do every time I drive through there, and I'm a Carp guy. I look down there and go, oh, I'm only going 30 miles an hour. I guess I should speed up. But it's 25 miles. My foot says 25 miles an hour. And I feel bad about going 30 in that 35-mile zone. So, again, I think that's going to be something that would be an easy fix. One of the challenges, again, that I don't know if all residents realize is this fact that the state, they say they're mandating that we take action on this. We move forward with the housing element. True, we have 3 of those, and we go from 901, if this project is approved, to 898. We still got a long way to go. But the advantage is that we are starting a process. We are starting a way that we can start knocking those numbers off. And again, the state has said, they've threatened us, I don't know if it's fact, I don't think it's law yet, but they have threatened us that if we, in fact, as a city, as a municipality, do not move forward quickly with this housing element, they will mandate it. And they will allow pretty much anything that comes in from outside of the area to be approved disregarding what we as a municipality put forward as far as our review process. And that is what we've been threatened with. Whether or not that's going to happen, that's what we've been threatened with. So for that reason, I think this project is a workable project. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, there's, I guess that you would find a lot of pluses and minuses with anything. The way I wouldn't make it with 1,500 square foot units. I'm sorry. I would make smaller units and make them more affordable. But I think that's probably not our choice. I mean, to do that, we're going to have to do public housing to get that kind of affordability. I was encouraged by getting it down a couple feet. I liked the flat roof, and that was a major draw for me, actually. And I liked the creating livability through the working with the bedrooms on the second level. So, I don't know.
Can we hear from the developers in terms of the livability and the bedrooms? Or the-
I'm going to botch your last name.
Salant.
Salant. I apologize. So, Commissioner Salant. So we had this discussion actually
Yes, we did.
at Planning Commission, and as we discussed there.
Could you address the council, please?
Sorry. So
Thank you so much for
my
your help.
apologies. So we had this discussion at Planning Commission. We actually took that down as something for further study. And again, those interior courtyards, those are still in flux. To us, those are part of the overall design that needs to get finished out as we develop the landscaping, as we develop the detailing, as we develop how we're using planters and how we're using shadow and how we're using all of these things. And those interior courtyards are really important. At Planning Commission, she used the word tunnel, and I wrote it down and went, oh, that's not great. So we purposely have gone back, and that is on our list of things to review and study, and including, the fact that, yes, we have bedrooms up against, quasi-public walkways. I mean, it's just residents in there. It's not the public. But it is an important issue to us. We will address it as we develop the details of the project. It is absolutely paramount to us that we don't create for lack of a better term, a Motel 6 situation where you're walking in front of everybody's window. We don't like that. And so, we don't have any issue with addressing that in some capacity. It will be part of our final package that will go to the city for building permits. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And Vice Mayor Alarcon, just to clarify, that was something that the applicant had agreed to at the Planning Commission, and that is incorporated already into condition number 2 of the recommended conditions of approval, right? So the language in there speaks to a commitment by the applicant to look at additional options to reduce the overall height of the project. That was based on some conversations that were had at the Planning Commission about structurally, kind of those floor framing between levels. Once that's further developed, there may be opportunities to shave some inches off of the project. Just based on that alone. Similarly, there was a commitment there to taking another look or studying revisions to address the privacy considerations for the portions of the units facing the interior courtyard. So that's already reflected in the the adopted version of the project by the Planning Commission and your recommended conditions tonight.
Thank you for confirming. Now, are you done? Sorry.
Yeah,
I was gonna share my
I'm done.
thoughts.
I'm done.
I think in terms of, just to echo what my fellow council members have said in terms of housing in the city, there's no doubt that we feel as though we have our hands tied. It seems as though, based on the presentations, the developer has made some good faith efforts to make changes to the project. And I hope, even as Nick mentioned, what those in terms of the privacy and the height. Hopefully you all will be able to do some of that as you all move forward should the project be approved. I appreciate in terms of, I think I also want to be cognizant of 9th Street, like I mentioned, which is why I asked that parking question. So I appreciate that those housing, I'm sorry, I'm tired. We're going on day 2 with City Council. I appreciate that those homes will have assigned parking. I think that could make a small impact, and I think that there's effort there. But at the end of the day, I also believe that housing really should be in our downtown area, and I think this project reflects that. I think with the other various projects that we've seen, they're outside of the downtown area, and I think if we could choose from out of any or all projects, I think this is a good one right now. It's not perfect. I think it's going to push Carpinteria a little bit, but I think that I think we're in a good place. I appreciate the proposal.
Would you go along with the developer's offer to reduce the height that he just made?
I would. And actually, I mean, if I want to push a little bit more, the developer did say that they're willing. I would want to have very low affordable housing, at least one of the 3. I would push for that. I understand that it might not be a cost saving, but in my mind, maybe I need to better understand that, because if it low is $2,000, how much is very low? $1,500. You're talking about $500 a month. I don't know if I see some heads shaking, so I don't know if that math is correct or not. So.
I have no idea what that number is, but I think I can kind of help out everybody. I think we can leave the pitch roofs and still change the angle a little bit and use some.
How much?
I think 17 inches. And I'd be happy to do one very low income unit.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right.
You good?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll make a motion. I move that the City's Council adopt resolution number 6295 and the attached findings for approval of project number 23-2221-DP/CDP/ARB, thereby approving the project and accepting the categorical exemption of pursuant to 15332 of the CEQA guidelines.
And I'll second that.
And does your motion include reduced roof height and one low-income unit?
Very low.
Very low.
Very low, sorry, thank you. It's late, I'm a morning person, you know.
Yes.
And I'll modify my second.
All right? All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you, Council.
Yeah, we'd like to thank the public, too, for coming out. It's always good to get a perspective. It's a tough one.
Thank you. I was forgetting my words there.
You want to close the meeting? You want to close the meeting?
Do you have to close the meeting?
Yeah, you do.
Yes, you do.
Meeting's closed.
you.